My child, stop scrolling. This isn't just another video. This is a divine interruption. I, the Lord your God, have summoned you here on purpose, because what I'm about to say will not only confirm what you felt but unlock what's been buried in you for years. This message is not for the many, it's for the marked. The ones who have walked through fire and wondered if they'd ever rise. The ones who carry weight in secret but wear grace in public. Yes, I'm talking to you. Don't let distraction steal this moment. I've wrapped mysteries inside these next few minutes that will reconstruct your clarity, realign your path, and release the mantle you thought passed you by. What's coming in this word will shift atmospheres inside you. And when I'm done speaking, you'll know you made it. And only the chosen few will understand why. So, don't miss a single breath of what I'm about to reveal. There's something sacred about this breath you're taking, something eternal in the silence that surrounds this very moment. You have crossed over an invisible line, one you didn't even know existed. Not everyone could see it, and most wouldn't have understood the cost. But I saw every inch of the climb, every scrape of your soul, every weary step you took without applause. You made it not because everything lined up perfectly, but because when everything fell apart, you still held on to me. And now heaven records this moment, not as a random turn in your story, but as the unveiling of a fulfilled promise. This is not the finish line, child. It's the holy evidence that your faith outlasted the fire. You made it through the shadows, the storms, the seasons of silence, and now I mark you with a divine declaration. You have arrived at a place no map could chart and no man could grant. You made it through what others collapsed under. You kept walking when surrender seemed logical. You endured not with perfect faith, but with persevering faith. And that's what I honor, not perfection, but pursue. I need you to hear me when I say this wasn't random. This wasn't luck. This wasn't survival by default. This was my hand on your life, guiding, covering, correcting, shielding, and sometimes even carrying you when your spirit was too tired to stand. Do not underestimate what you've just stepped into. This isn't just another phase of life. This is a spiritual realm reserved for those who refuse to bow to bitterness in the middle of brokenness. You passed through fire and came out refined, not because the heat was less intense, but because my presence was more powerful. Even now, the atmosphere around you is different. I have surrounded you with a covering no eye can see, but every demon recognizes. You are marked. You are sealed. You are validated by the weight of what you've endured. The world may not understand why you weep at random moments, why you pause mid-sentence with trembling lips, why your smile carries so much history behind it. But I know. I know because I was there in every silent scream, every weary worship session, every moment where your knees buckled in prayer with no answer in sight. And now, beloved, I whisper to the very marrow of your bones, you made it. You made it with nothing but me. And that was always enough. My child, I know what it felt like to walk through those days where your feet were heavy with silence and your hands were filled with nothing but unanswered questions. You watched others celebrate mountaintops while you wandered through valleys, quiet, unnoticed, uncelebrated. And still, you didn't turn away. The loneliness didn't disqualify you. It distilled you. It made you more pure, more pliable, more precious in my sight. Don't let the silence fool you. What you did in the dark was louder in the spirit than any public parade. The world heard nothing, but heaven heard everything. Every whispered prayer, every clenched moment of surrender, every night you pulled the covers over your tears thinking no one saw you break. But I did. I saw, I stayed. I stored every tear like sacred oil, and I've been waiting for this moment to pour it back over you as honor. You are not invisible. You were intentionally veiled. And now, I tear off the veil to reveal what I was shaping underneath it all. The valleys you walked weren't punishment. They were preparation. I wasn't punishing you with obscurity. I was preserving you in intimacy. You weren't disqualified because others overlooked you. You were qualified because you kept going when no one validated you. And that is why I speak now with the thunder of heaven behind every word. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are not passed over. You are chosen. Chosen not because of applause, but because of your posture. Chosen not because of popularity, but because of purity. You kept your spirit clean in the places others allowed bitterness to stain them. You didn't need a stage to obey me. You didn't need approval to trust me. And that is why your name has been echoed through heaven's corridors. Angels don't salute pride. They bow before humility. And child, your humility has summoned their reverence. That is why doors are about to swing wide without you ever having to knock. That is why you're about to step into rooms you didn't even apply for. Because this isn't a reward for performance. This is a revelation of my pleasure. And now let me show you something few ever get to see. Your value wasn't just a passage. It was a proving ground. You passed a test that wasn't televised, but it was spiritually seismic. It shook things in realms you didn't know existed. While others were fighting to be seen, you were being formed to carry glory. That's why the attacks felt targeted. That's why the weight was personal. Because the enemy saw what was forming in you and panicked. But even his panic could not prevent your process. You didn't just survive the valley, you sanctified it with your worship. And that's why I am now redeeming every mile you walked in silence. What felt like loss was leverage. What felt like obscurity was orchestration. And now I release the reversal. Loud victories are good, but lasting ones are God-breathed. And what I'm giving you now will carry the fragrance of the fire you endured and the faith you chose when no one else believed. So look around you, not with suspicion but with spiritual awareness. You're not the same. And the atmosphere around you knows it. Demons that once mocked your delay now tremble at your destiny. Angels that once guarded your journey now usher you into fulfillment. Because you made it through the proving, and now comes the promotion. Let others wonder how. Let them guess why. But only you and I know the true weight of what it costs to stand here today. And because of that, I say again, as I said before, you made it. And it is time for the quiet valley to echo with the sound of divine validation. I watched you scale walls built by generational fear, climb cliffs shaped by disappointment, and ascend mountains molded from misunderstanding. And you did it without a crowd cheering. You did it without a map. You did it with blistered hands and bruised knees, and still, you climbed. You climbed with no assurance of what was at the top. You climbed when it would have been easier to stay where you were. You climbed even when those closest to you told you to stop. The world looks at your elevation and assumes it came quickly, but I know every rung of pain you pulled yourself up from. I was there when you had nothing left but my promise, and you didn't barter with it. You didn't twist it. You believed it. Even when the silence mocked you and your strength began to dissolve, you climbed with obedience instead of outcome. And that obedience has now become your inheritance. You see, others chase arrival, but you chose alignment. That's why I brought you to this place, not because you demanded it, but because you deserved it in the spirit. Not through pride, but through posture. You bowed lower when you could have puffed up. You let go when you could have held on to what was killing you. You said yes to me when no results followed, and that yes thundered through eternity. I don't measure greatness by platforms. I measure it by posture under pressure. And child, You had holy posture when the world only taught you performance. That's why the shift is unstoppable. That's why this season will not be like the last. Because this isn't a season, it's a summons. And I am summoning the version of you I've been shaping in the shadows. I didn't just bring you here to bless you. I brought you here to build through you. And that building requires the kind of obedience that doesn't wait for clarity to move. Now hear me. The climb wasn't just for you. It was for others too. They will follow the trail of your tears like breadcrumbs of hope. They will trace the scent of your surrender back to the place of my presence. Because your climb was a message, not a mistake. You ascended in a realm where only the obedient survive. And now I will multiply what you climbed for. I will cause acceleration that doesn't make logical sense. I will open heavens that didn't respond to eloquence, but responded to endurance. You endured when others exited. You endured when even your own heart questioned me. And now the reward will be wrapped not in gold, but in glory. Glory that sits heavy. Glory that cannot be shaken. Glory that transforms not only your life, but those watching silently from the sidelines of your story. To listen closely. I am not done speaking, but I needed you to hear this first. You climbed when it hurt, and you obeyed when it didn't make sense. And now I will move in ways that don't need to make sense. Because this isn't about logic. It's about legacy. And your legacy, child, is being forged not by fame but by faithfulness. So rest, not because it's over, but because I'm about to take over. You've made it this far with obedience. Now let me reward you with overflow. My beloved, I want you to take a breath and hear me not just with your ears, but with your entire soul. Because this truth is wrapped in glory too weighty for shallow hearing. You thought the weight you carried was punishment. You assumed the burden was because of what you lacked. But child, what you carry wasn't meant to crush you. It was sent to crown you. It wasn't assigned to end you. It was appointed to elevate you. What felt like a breaking was actually a birthing. What looked like loss was leverage for something no man could orchestrate. The heaviness was not a sign of abandonment. It was a mark of destiny pressing against the limits of your former self. You didn't walk under pressure because you were forgotten. You walked under pressure because I had called you. I placed weight on you not because you were weak, but because I knew your back could carry the oil that would overflow through the cracks of your brokenness. I want you to look back not with shame, but with holy reverence. Because what didn't kill you was never meant to. It was sent to cleanse you of every dependency except me. The furnace you walked through didn't burn you. It burned off the falsehoods others tried to dress you in. The fire removed what you didn't know was holding you back. And I was in that fire with you. I didn't stand at a distance. I stood in the middle. You didn't see me because the flames were blinding. But I never left. While others stepped away when the heat decreased, I stepped closer. The furnace didn't consume your future. It clarified it. And didn't diminish your value. It distilled it. Do you understand? That weight, that fire, that intensity, it wasn't an error in your life's equation. It was evidence that something extraordinary was being forged. The crown you now carry is invisible to the world, but in the spirit realm, it is undeniable. Demons bow when you speak. Angels move when you pray. Not because of eloquence, but because of endurance. You didn't crumble, child. You were crowned. And the crown is not made of gold, but of grit. Not diamonds, but devotion. Not rubies, but resilience. This is why I allowed the testing. Not to torment you, but to trust you with things I cannot hand to everyone. You are not ordinary. You are not common. You are not replaceable. And that's why your journey didn't follow the typical pattern. Your timeline didn't look like theirs because your purpose didn't match theirs. I wasn't building a replica. I was crafting a revelation. And revelations must be refined in fire. Now you wear what can't be stolen. Now you walk in what can't be imitated. Because I crowned you, not in public, but in private. I laid it upon your head when you knelt in tears and still called me faithful. That moment when no one clapped for you but heaven stood still, that is when I placed authority on your life. And now, as you rise from the ashes of battles others never saw, I want you to walk boldly into rooms you once tiptoed through. Because you don't just carry a crown, you carry the evidence of fire. And only a chosen few can understand the weight of that glory. I need you to slow down and let me whisper this into the deep places of your identity. What's happening now is not just a calendar flip. It's not just the close of one chapter and the start of another. It's revelation. It's the unveiling of the person I originally designed, the version of you that had been wrapped in layers of survival, performance, and protection. You see, the battles you went through didn't just take time, they took pieces of you. Pieces that were never supposed to define you in the first place. But now, I am peeling back the labels others glued to your soul. Labels like too late, too broken, not enough, forgotten. I am tearing them off, one by one, with divine precision, so the original glory beneath can finally breathe. This is your revealing, not a show but a sacred unveiling. Not a promotion by men, but a presentation from heaven. This revealing isn't about what you've achieved. It's about what I've awakened within you. It's not about status. It's about substance. Because I've hidden treasures in you that pressure was meant to unlock. You spent years trying to fix what was never broken, trying to be who others expected, trying to blend in when I created you to disrupt. But now, I'm calling forth the one who was shaped by silence, sculpted by storms, and steadied by surrender. The version of you who trusts without proof, prays without performance, and praises without an audience. That's who I'm revealing. And what comes next will require this version of you, because where I'm leading you, pretense cannot follow. Masks will melt. Facades will fall. Only the authentic will rise. And that's why the process was so personal. Because I wasn't polishing you. I was peeling you. I wasn't enhancing you. I was exposing the beauty I placed there long before pain had a chance to distort it. So don't be afraid of this revealing. Don't resist the spotlight I'm shining, because it's not the light of judgment. It's the light of justice. I am restoring what was buried. I am resurrecting what was silenced. I am amplifying what once whispered through your tears. And the world will not recognize you, not because you've changed, but because you finally emerged. Let them wonder. Let them whisper. They didn't see the nights you bled in silence. They didn't see the altar you built from your brokenness. They weren't there when you laid your dreams at my feet and said, even if not, I'll still trust you. But I was. I saw it. And that's why I'm revealing you now. Not to impress, but to impact. This unveiling isn't about ego. It's about eternity. I'm revealing you not for fame, but for function. You carry something this world cannot afford to miss. And the time for hiding is over. So step forward, not with fear, but with fire. Let your footsteps be a sermon. Let your presence prophecy. Because the real you has entered the room. And hell is nervous, heaven is rejoicing, and the earth is groaning for exactly this. You didn't arrive here accidentally. You were carried here by grace, shaped here by pain, and prepared here by purpose. This is not the end. This is the unveiling. You made it. And now the revealing begins. My precious one, if you only knew what I was doing behind the veil while others were busy misjudging your process. While they pointed to the delay and whispered of detours, I was orchestrating a divine timeline that would expose their misunderstanding and elevate your destiny. They didn't see what I saw. They didn't feel what I felt in you. They labeled you according to the clock on the wall, but I was watching the calendar of eternity. I never operated on human time. I don't pace my promises by public opinion. While they mourn your delay as loss, I was weaving it into layers of legacy. Delay was never denial, and what they called failure was actually formation. I wasn't late, I was loving. I was not absent. I was architecting. What felt like silence was strategy. What looked like stagnation was me stitching together something that couldn't be seen from the outside. They looked at your life through the lens of the immediate, but I saw it through the eyes of the eternal. They saw gaps in progress. I saw growth in posture. You see, child, I never needed them to understand your process. I only needed you to trust my presence. I could have explained every no, every delay, every door that stayed shut. But if I had, your faith would have become formula. Instead, I chose the path of mystery, not to confuse you, but to consecrate you. I let them judge you in the cocoon, so they'd be speechless when I revealed the butterfly. What you were wrapped in wasn't confinement. It was construction. I kept it hidden so pride wouldn't touch it. I allowed delay so that when the release came, no one could claim they helped. This is why I let your timeline stretch, your heart break, your name be forgotten, because I was preserving the unveiling of something that could not be duplicated. Do you hear me? You were not forgotten. You were being formed. What others abandoned, I anointed. What they overlooked, I overflowed. You have no idea the battles I fought on your behalf while you questioned if I left. You were never out of my sight. Not for a breath. Not for a blink. I carried you through nights where hope felt like vapor and promises felt like stories from someone else's life. But through it all, I whispered reminders into your soul. Wait. Trust. I'm not finished. And now, I declare to you with the fullness of my voice, I'm unveiling what I hid in delay. And every lie that was spoken over your waiting will be swallowed up in the weight of my glory. Because I wasn't late. I was writing legacy. And now the ink has dried. The seal has been broken. And what once felt like wilderness is becoming wonder. So don't defend your delays. Let me define them. Don't fight to prove your worth. Let my work be your witness. You are not the product of failure. You are the evidence of formation. And this moment, this shift, this divine eruption in your life, is the very thing I was forming all along. Let them see it. Let them marvel. But don't let their misjudgment change the truth. You didn't fail. You formed. You didn't stall. You stood. You didn't quit. You qualified. And now, I release what only I could design. Come closer. I want you to hear this like a holy whisper, the kind that enters not through the ear, but through the spirit. You have wept in the dark and believed no one saw. You poured your soul into empty rooms, convinced your cries were echoing into voids. But child, I captured everyone. Every tear you released in silence hit the floor of my throne room like thunder. They were never wasted. They were never unseen. They became ink on the scroll of your story, and now, I'm unsealing what you never thought would be read aloud. You see, heaven never ignored your ache. I didn't turn a blind eye to the nights you said yes to me through trembling lips and heavy lungs. You made altars out of agony, and I received each one as worship. You thought your obedience went unnoticed, but it was recorded in realms unseen. Not a moment of your surrender was missed. You didn't need a spotlight to shine in my eyes. You didn't need applause for me to applaud you. I saw the mornings you rose without answers and still said, I trust you. I saw the days you served while your heart bled silently. And I etched it all, every moment, onto scrolls that no demon could tamper with and no man could erase. And now, my child, I'm unsealing those scrolls. I'm reading aloud the evidence of your obedience before all of heaven. I'm letting the weight of your unseen yes become the wind behind your next step. This is not compensation, it's confirmation. I'm not rewarding performance. I'm revealing promises. Promises rooted not in your strength, but in your faithfulness when you felt the weakest. You have been seen in secret, and now I will honor you in open places. But listen carefully. This isn't about fame. This is about fulfillment. What I am doing now is not just an answer to prayer. It's the activation of every buried dream, every quiet seed you sowed when no one was watching. The scrolls are sacred. They carry weight because they carry your legacy. Not the legacy the world tried to force on you, but the one I wrote when I first spoke your name. And now I'm aligning the timing of earth with the testimony of heaven. Doors are opening, not because you knocked, but because your obedience unlocked them. Keys are turning, not because you asked, but because your tears triggered gates to open that no man can close. And so I say this with reverent joy. The scroll is open. The angels are moving. And the manifestation of what was once only whispered in your prayers is now becoming visible. Watch me confirm it. Watch me speak through strangers. Watch me reverse verdicts, restore years, and raise you in ways that no resume can explain. This is the moment your hidden worship becomes public wonder. Not for your glory, but for mine. Because you gave me your yes when all you had left was a maybe. And now the scrolls sing your name in the language of fulfillment. Child, listen closely, because what I'm about to reveal cannot be measured by human logic or explained by natural circumstances. When the pressure mounted, when the storm howled, when life gave you every reason to collapse, you didn't break. You bowed. You bent low in surrender when others would have snapped in defiance. And though the world applauds the ones who roar the loudest, I applaud the ones who bow the deepest. Your strength was not in how loudly you shouted through the storm, but in how humbly you worshipped within it. Your surrender became your sound. Your kneeling became your warfare. While others cursed the wind, you knelt before me with trembling lips and whispered, "Still, I trust you." I want you to know that every time you bowed, the heavens recorded it. Angels took note. Demons trembled. Because true authority is not birthed in arrogance, it is birthed in adoration. You bowed when pride said stand tall. You bowed when fear said run. You bowed when the pain was piercing and the answers were absent. That's why you're still standing, not because you fought harder than others, but because you lowered yourself into my hands when others tried to lift themselves by their own strength. And now, beloved, in the silence of that surrender, I have exalted you in ways the world cannot see. You don't need a stage to be celebrated. You don't need a spotlight to be significant. Your name has already been spoken in heavenly realms. And when I speak your name, atmospheres shift. Understand this. Your bowing was not a sign of weakness. It was a signal of intimacy. It told the spirit realm that you belonged to me, that I could trust you with pressure because you wouldn't use it for platform, but for purity, that I could allow the pressing because you wouldn't use it for pity, but for praise. Your bow exposed what heaven already knew. You are mine. And because of that, I am lifting you, not in arrogance, but in authority. I am elevating your voice, your vision, your reach, not because of ambition, but because of alignment. You were never interested in being seen. You were interested in being sent. And now, I am sending you into places others only dreamed of, not because you demanded them, but because you were devoted to me in secret. So, walk boldly now, not with pride, but with peace. Let your steps echo the sound of surrender. Let your presence carry the fragrance of reverence. The world may not understand why you move with such calm authority, but I do. Because you didn't claw your way to influence. You climbed into obedience. And I exalt those who bow low, those who choose me in the dark, those who worship when weeping. You are not just stepping into elevation. You are stepping into eternal endorsement. And that cannot be taken, tampered with, or turned against you. You didn't break. You bowed. And that is the mark of the chosen. Child, I know how hard it was to walk with that clarity. To follow me through fog when others sprinted in daylight. I saw the way you sat in the silence, aching for direction, yet still lifting your eyes to me. You could have walked away, but instead you waited. You could have demanded answers, but instead you chose awe. And I want you to know that awe moved me. That holy, trembling awe, where you didn't need full understanding to offer full obedience. That was the sound of trust rising from your soul. You didn't choose the easy road of explanation. You chose the sacred path of mystery. And in that mystery, you became mine in a deeper way. Do you realize how rare that is? Most crave control. Most crave formulas. Most want me to prove myself before they proceed. But you followed the whisper when others waited for a shout. You honored my silence. You treated my delay as holy ground. And because of that, I've revealed to you what I reveal only to the chosen, the beauty of mystery, the majesty of not knowing the how, but still trusting the who, the sacred rhythm of moving with me, not because you see, but because you know me. That, child, is not normal faith. That is consecrated faith. And that kind of faith doesn't just get answers, it gets access. That is why you now carry keys in the Spirit. Keys to realms others cannot enter, because mystery has made you mature. You're not just a believer. You're a carrier. You carry anointing that was birthed in silence. You carry insight that was forged in uncertainty. And the mystery you embraced has become the oil you now pour. Others will come to you, drawn not by information, but by impartation. They won't understand why they feel peace when you speak. They won't know why their hearts soften in your presence. But I will know, because I was the one who shaped that oil from the crushing of your unanswered questions. So don't despise the mystery anymore. It was never meant to confuse you. It was meant to consecrate you. Mystery is not a punishment. It's a portal. And you walk through it with reverence. That's why you're here. That's why the atmosphere around you has shifted. You didn't get here through calculation. You got here through consecration. And because you honored the unknown, I am now making the impossible undeniable. This is not the end of mystery. It is the beginning of manifestation. The invisible things you trusted me for are becoming visible. The quiet things you believed are becoming loud. Because mystery always leads to manifestation. And now, child, it's your turn to witness what only the chosen can carry. My child, I've watched you take on weights that didn't belong to you. I saw how you silently carried the emotional load for others, lifting burdens off their backs while your own shoulders ached under pressure no one noticed. You bore the pain of those who mocked you. You forgave when they didn't ask. You held up others who would have let you fall. And still, you did it without complaint, without applause, without vengeance. You absorbed tension, criticism, and the cold absence of those you once called safe. You wept for their deliverance, even while they wounded you. And while others saw weakness, I saw royalty. Because only kings and queens in the spirit carry what they didn't create, and still bless what tried to break them. Let me say it clearly, you didn't imagine the weight. It was real. It was spiritual. It was generational. You stood in gaps that should have swallowed you whole, but you didn't break. You became a bridge. And when the world offered bitterness as medicine, you chose mercy. You stood in war for no one acknowledged. You cried for reconciliation when division would have felt more justifiable. But you didn't choose justice. You chose Jesus. And that choice, that holy posture of sacrificial love, is what heaven recorded. Your burden-bearing was not unnoticed. It was anointed. You carried dysfunction into the throne room and laid it down in intercession. You wept for their healing while bleeding from their betrayal. And that, child, that is what separated you. Not your prayers in public, but your tears in private. This is why I can now trust you with more. I'm not giving you more weight to crush you. I'm giving you more authority. You carried their burdens, and now I'm placing crowns on your life. Crowns of wisdom, crowns of influence, crowns of clarity that only those who have passed through silent suffering can wear. You didn't disqualify yourself by feeling the pain. You qualified yourself by forgiving through it. That's why what's coming next will carry a unique fragrance. It will smell like grace. It will feel like legacy. And it will confuse those who tried to bury you, because the soil they tossed over you only made your roots run deeper. So don't apologize for how deep your spirit runs. Don't hide your intercession. Don't mute your compassion to make others comfortable. I'm increasing your capacity now because your character has been tested and found trustworthy. You carried what didn't belong to you, and now I'm giving you what no one else is qualified to receive. Because your burden-bearing wasn't just weight. It was worship. And I reward worship with wonders. My beloved, what's happening now is not just a shift in season. It's a seismic shaking in the spiritual realm. This is not a random upgrade. It's not a superficial change. This is the kind of shift that breaks generational ceilings and shatters invisible walls that held you back for decades. But hear me, not everyone will understand it. Not because they're evil. Not because they are against you. But because they were never willing to walk through the refining fire that brought you to this place. They will see the change, but they won't comprehend the cost. They will notice your acceleration, but remain unaware of the altar you built to get here. You've walked paths lined with silence, paved with pain, guarded by angels, and tested by shadows. Few knew what it took for you to keep believing when it would have been easier to settle. Fewer still recognized the sacrifices you made when compromise was calling louder. But I knew. I saw every moment of resistance against the easy road. Every time you chose me over popularity, integrity over image, obedience over opportunity, I marked it. The road you walked wasn't glamorous. It was gritty. It was glory-covered, yes, but also stained with the scent of sacrifice. And that's what makes this shift so holy. It's not happening because of hype. It's happening because of honor. My honor over your hidden history. This is why it won't make sense to the crowd. Because this isn't a corporate promotion. This is a personal prophecy fulfilled. This shift was carved out by footsteps only you were brave enough to take. That's why I had to isolate you. That's why you had to walk alone for a season. Because this level of shift demands purity, not popularity. I needed you free from comparison. I needed you clear from clutter. And now, you are entering a realm where few can follow, not because you shut the door, but because they refuse the process that built this doorway. I'm taking you from hidden to heralded. But make no mistake, this heralding isn't noise. It's notice. Heaven is pointing to you not for spectacle, but for significance. So when they question the shift, bless them. When they wonder why it's you, smile with peace. Because they didn't see the nights you questioned your sanity while holding on to a silent promise. They weren't there when you stayed in the fire instead of escaping the process. This shift is not random. It is reward. It is the unveiling of what I have been shaping behind the veil. And only the faithful find this threshold. You didn't earn it. You endured it. And now, beloved, you've crossed into the uncommon. Let those who watched from a distance wonder. Let those who judged from a platform be silenced. Because only the road walkers will recognize what this shift truly means. You made it. And you belong here. I watched so many begin this journey with excitement in their hearts and declarations on their lips. They clung to the promise, but when the process arrived clothed in delay, silence, and pain, they slipped away. I saw them walk when the road got too narrow, when the fire burned too hot, when the pruning felt too personal. But you stayed. You didn't stay because it was easy. You stayed because you believed. Even when belief felt like betrayal because nothing looked like what I said, you held on. You didn't understand me, but you still obeyed me. You didn't feel me, but you still feared me. You didn't see me, but you still sought me. And that, my precious one, is the essence of faith. That is what separates the shallow from the sanctified, the called from the chosen. Others wanted the crown, but not the crushing. They desired the platform, but not the pressing. They chased the outcome, but avoided the obedience. But you stayed when staying made no sense. You built altars in your desert. You prayed over promises that looked dead. You danced in rooms full of disappointment and still called me good. And heaven stood in awe, not because your performance was perfect, but because your posture was pure. The process didn't kill your promise. It qualified it. Because what I have for you must be carried, and only those who survive the fire without becoming bitter can hold what I'm about to release. And now, because you stayed, I am releasing what cannot be earned, inheritance. You've crossed from believing into becoming, from testing into trust. This is not just about the things you prayed for. This is about who you became while waiting for them. This is the divine irony. What you thought was delay was actually development. I was building within you the capacity to carry what you couldn't have handled before. You see, the process wasn't punishment, it was preparation. And because you didn't abandon it, I will not allow your promise to be aborted. Others may not understand why doors open now with ease, but I do. Because I watched you keep the door to your heart open to me when all I gave you was stillness. So let them watch. Let them wonder. But never forget this truth. You stayed. And that is why you now step into the supernatural. Because in a world that chases quick results, you chose quiet resilience. You waited on me, and now heaven is waiting on you. To speak, to step, to shift. And I, the Lord your God, will fulfill every word. Because you didn't just want the promise, you stayed through the process. You now know you weren't abandoned. You were anchored, handpicked for something higher. And child, just as I've chosen you, I'm calling you now to be a vessel through which my word reaches others who are still in their silent battles. I said in Isaiah 55:11, my word will not return void but will accomplish what I please and prosper where I send it. And I'm sending it through you. Every time you give, through super thanks, membership, or PayPal, you are sowing seed into soil that yields eternal harvests. This is not charity. It's kingdom circulation. You're fueling the oil, carrying light into places where darkness still lingers. If your spirit knows this word is from me, then this moment is your divine appointment. Sow now, and I will multiply your seed, rebuke the devourer, and open doors no man can shut. Go to the video description and give now, as I lead you. Come close and hear me now, not with your natural ears, but with your spirit wide open. You wondered why I tucked you away when others were stepping into the spotlight. You questioned my silence while others seemed to rise with ease. You thought perhaps I had passed you by. But child, I never left you. I hid you. I didn't hide you to punish you. I hid you to preserve you. Because what I placed inside you was too sacred to be exposed too soon. What I was building in you could not be formed in front of those who wouldn't understand it. Your obscurity was not a sign of absence. It was a seal of anointing. I covered you not because you were unwanted, but because you were uncharted territory. There is a kind of glory that cannot be carried casually, a weight that crushes the unprepared. And so I hid you in the cleft of the rock, like I did Moses. I kept you beneath the shadow of my wings. While others rushed to be seen, I asked you to remain. And you did. You stayed hidden in the secret place, while your heart broke in hidden places. You worshipped me in rooms no one entered. You built altars with no audience. You prayed prayers no one heard but me. And now, I am revealing what I was refining. I am uncovering what I once concealed, not to expose you, but to exalt me through you. Because true crowning doesn't happen under flashing lights. It happens under the weight of reverence. And now the time has come. The covering has lifted, but the crown I place on you will not be seen in gold. It will be seen in glory. It will rest on your obedience. It will shine through your surrender. This is not a coronation of applause. It's a coronation of alignment. What I hid in you will now help others. What I kept quiet in you will now shake kingdoms. You are not rising out of obscurity. You are emerging out of intimacy. You didn't push for this moment. I preserved it for you. Because only a few can carry a crown and not bow to the applause of man. And you, my child, are one of those few. So wear it well. Not with arrogance, but with awe. Not with entitlement, but with eternal awareness. You were hidden not to be forgotten, but to be formed. You were covered not to be diminished, but to be developed. And now, the crown sits where the crushing once was. The anointing flows where the ache once lived. Because I hide what is holy. I cover what carries weight. And now, the unveiling begins, not for applause, but for assignment. My child, I know how many times the lie echoed in your ears, the cruel, cunning voice that whispered, "You've missed it. It's too late for you." You heard it when others succeeded before you. You felt it when years passed and promises remained untouched. You saw the calendar change while your circumstance didn't. And in the silent war of your own mind, you started to wonder if the voice was right. But here I am, the voice of truth, declaring to you now that lie is broken. It was never too late. It was always on time. You didn't miss the moment. I was maturing you for it. While the enemy screamed delay, I was laying foundations so deep that when the promise comes, it will not collapse under pressure. Let me remind you of something eternal. I do not rush masterpieces. I don't expedite destiny because of human anxiety. What I've been doing in your life wasn't stalling. It was structuring. I've been setting things in motion that eyes couldn't see. I've been aligning people timing, opportunities, and miracles in ways that required your patience to unlock their full power. You see, beloved, the reason it felt delayed is because the magnitude of what's coming required wait. And now, you have it. You didn't lose your timing. You grew into it. The doors that are about to open are not last-minute blessings. They are on-time manifestations. And they wouldn't have made sense to the old version of you. That's why I had to wait. That's why I had to grow you, because the blessing coming now will fit you perfectly. You're not behind. You're becoming. What you thought was stagnation was actually supernatural synchronization. I let the clock tick, not to tease you, but to train you in the tension of trust. You learned to lean into me instead of timelines. You learned to believe in me without visible signs. And that kind of faith, that gritty, stubborn, radical trust, is what opens ancient gates. That's why I say to you now, you're not too late. You're the exact temperature of destiny. You've been refined, readied, and released. And the noise that once told you you'd missed your moment will now be silenced by the thunder of my perfect timing. So walk now, not with rush, but with reverence. You're not scrambling to catch up. You're standing in what was always yours. I've protected this moment like a sacred inheritance. I've kept it untouched by premature hands. And now, it's ripe. You've outlasted the lie. You've overcome the fear. You've endured the ache of waiting. And now, your timeline aligns with mine. You're not late, child. You're right on time, and time is bowing to you. There were moments, weren't there, where you thought the storm would have the final word. The winds didn't just howl around you. They howled in you. The voices of doubt, fear, regret, they became like thunder in your soul. And still you stayed. You planted your feet in truth when lies tried to uproot you. You stood when the ground shook beneath you. You wept, yes, but even in weeping, you oared. Others saw the storm and ran for shelter. But you, beloved, you became the shelter. You carried peace into chaos, not because you felt it, but because you refused to leave the fight. And that refusal, that holy defiance against hell, is why the atmosphere around you listens now when you speak. You didn't just survive the storm. You silenced it. Let me tell you what the enemy never saw coming, that the storm he sent to destroy you would become the school that trained you. He thought the winds would scatter you, but they sharpened you. He thought the waves would drown your faith, but they deepened it. He thought the darkness would blind you, but it made you see clearer. The very chaos meant to consume you has now consecrated you. And that's why your words carry weight now. You speak not from theory, but from testimony. You decree not from emotion, but from encounter. You don't guess your way through warfare, you carry the blueprint that only survivors of the storm possess. The weight you feel when you enter a room, that's not intimidation. That's spiritual stature. This is why the next season will feel different. You won't fight like before, not because there's no opposition, but because you now carry authority. You didn't just come out of the storm, you came out with keys. And those keys open things in others. When you speak, chains will break. When you walk, darkness will shift. Not because of a title or a microphone, but because your life now prophesies. Your scars sing psalms that angels recognize. You bear the aroma of one who has touched the hem in the middle of the hurricane. You were not just protected, you were promoted through pain. And now, that pain has become power. So stand tall, not as a survivor, but as a storm silencer. You've graduated from panic to peace, from confusion to clarity. What tried to kill you now confirms you. And when others ask how you did it, you won't even need to explain. Your presence will be the answer. Because presence forged in pressure always carries a sound. The sound of authority. The sound of heaven. The sound of someone who made it through hell and didn't just escape, but emerged with fire in their bones. Yes, child, you silenced the storm. And now, the storm will recognize you. I watched you wrestle with that decision, child. I saw you standing at the crossroads with trembling hands and a heart full of questions. What you left behind wasn't small, it was safe. It was the version of comfort you knew. It was the place where your name was known, where your rhythm was set, where your identity was tethered to the approval of those who applauded your survival but not your becoming. And yet you walked away. Not because you had all the answers, not because the path ahead was clear, but because you felt me, even faintly, calling you deeper. And your soul said yes, even while your flesh still wept. You walked away from what made sense because you sensed something greater. You left the shallow waters, the predictable routines, the circles that celebrated a version of you that no longer existed. You chose mystery over familiarity. You chose movement over maintenance. You chose to follow my voice, even when all you had was a whisper. And heaven took notice. Because that kind of obedience is not common. That kind of risk is not for the religious, it's for the remnant. I didn't call you to comfort. I called you to conquest. But conquest doesn't always begin with a sword. Sometimes it begins with a step. The one you took when you let go of what was root in order to chase what was God. And I want you to hear me say this now, with all of heaven leaning in to confirm it. You were right to walk away. Even though they didn't understand. Even though they called you ungrateful, unstable, too intense. You were not leaving out of rebellion. You were responding out of revelation. Because I didn't design you for smallness. I didn't anoint you to repeat cycles that kept you chained. What I placed inside you required space. And where you were could not hold who you were becoming. You thought you were leaving a situation. But you were actually leaving limitation. You didn't exit rejection. You exited restriction. And now I am leading you into wide spaces. Into places where your voice will not be tolerated, but treasured. Where your fire will not be dimmed, but fanned into flame. So don't look back with regret. Don't second guess your exit. It was not a mistake. It was a marking. The moment you step out of what was familiar, you step into what was eternal. And this next season will be confirmation after confirmation that you made the right move. Because the deep places you are about to enter will require all the room you made by letting go. You walked away not because it was easy, but because it was ordained. And now, what once felt like loss will become the launch guide for legacy. Yes, child, I called you. And you answered. Welcome to the deep. Let me unravel a lie the enemy tried to dress you in. You're invisible. You're forgotten. You've been passed over. Those words weren't just lies. They were weapons, forged in the fires of fear and aimed straight at your purpose. You whispered them every time someone else was chosen before you. Every time your name wasn't called. Every time you sowed in silence and reap only more stillness. But I want you to know this truth, child. You were never overlooked. I had my eyes fixed on you the entire time. Not watching from afar, but from within the fire. I wasn't distant. I was deliberate. And while others saw a delay, I was watching something far more sacred. Your obedience when it cost you everything. I saw when you showed up even when you weren't celebrated. I recorded every moment you gave when it felt like you had nothing left. You didn't serve for status. You served because you loved me. You didn't sow for recognition. You sowed because you trusted me. And those moments, those private, pain-soaked, prayer-covered moments are now becoming keys. Unseen obedience always unlocks visible favor. You're about to walk into rooms you didn't apply for. You're about to receive answers to prayers you stopped praying out loud. Not because you shouted the loudest, but because you obeyed the longest. You stayed when others sprinted. You stood when others collapsed. You waited when others wandered. And now, I will show you what only the watched ones get to experience. Because yes, child, you were being watched. Not by those who gossip, not by those who judge your journey from the sidelines, but by heaven itself. The angels were dispatched not just to protect, but to record. And now the record is being opened. Now the reward is being released. But hear me clearly. This is not payment for performance. This is promotion of posture. Because your posture never shifted, even when the pressure increased. And that posture, one of humility, honor, and hunger, is what I can trust with influence. I am not elevating you to impress men. I am elevating you to impact nations. And what once felt like invisibility will now feel like divine illumination. So prepare yourself, not for attention, but for assignment. The light that's coming will not shine to flatter your ego. It will shine to confirm your endurance. And yes, it will confuse people. Yes, it will cause questions. But you won't need to explain anything. Your favor will speak for you. Your story will echo through atmospheres. And those who once questioned your calling will now quiet themselves in awe of what I've done through you. Because I do not overlook those who obey in the shadows. I exalt them in the spotlight of my choosing. And now, child, it's your turn. There were moments I watched you curl inward under the weight of sorrow, pressure, betrayal, and confusion. It wasn't just pain, it was warfare. The kind of agony that claws at identity, whispers doubts in the midnight hours, and makes even the strongest consider giving up. And yet, here you are. Not because you avoided the crushing, but because you allowed yourself to be crushed and still chose me. You didn't harden. You didn't numb. You didn't collapse into bitterness. You surrendered. And in that surrender, I embedded strength so supernatural, the enemy still hasn't figured out how you made it through. They don't know what you carried. They don't know what it cost you to keep believing. They see your smile but didn't witness your soul contorted in the quiet places where no one clapped, no one noticed, and no one came. They assumed you were always this strong, but strength wasn't handed to you. It was harvested from surrender. Every time you fell on your face instead of falling apart, I was filling you. Every time you said, "Not my will, but yours," I was marking you. Every time you whispered, "Help me, God," I was hiding reserves of divine strength in the marrow of your bones. Because I don't reward control, I reward yielding. And you, child, yielded when it made no sense. That's what makes you dangerous in the spirit. The crushing was never meant to kill you. It was meant to extract the oil. And what I'm about to do next in your life will smell like that oil. It will carry the aroma of someone who knows what it is to suffer and still serve, to ache and still adore, to bleed and still believe. You didn't get here because you were perfect. You got here because you refused to break without bowing. You let the crushing shape you. And now, I am letting the world see what only I saw. You didn't just survive, you've been transformed into one who carries fire from the furnace. Others lost their voice in the pressure. You found yours. So carry this next chapter not with fear, but with fire. You will walk timidly, you'll walk triumphantly. Because this oil wasn't manufactured in a moment. It was cultivated in every crushing season. And it is that oil, not charisma, not credentials, not connections, that will unlock doors you thought were closed. Because I hid strength in your surrender. And now, beloved, I pour that oil like honor over your head. You are ready. My child, how many nights did you whisper, God, have you forgotten me? I heard you. I heard every question you didn't even have the strength to verbalize. I was there in the heat of the battle, in the aching rooms where silence seemed louder than my voice. And I know, it felt like abandonment. It felt like you were alone. But I never left you. Not for a moment. I didn't forget you in the fire. I was fashioning you in it. You weren't being punished. You were being positioned. Because only fire can purify gold. And only pressure can shape a throne that won't collapse under the weight of destiny. You see, child, thrones aren't built in the palace. They are forged in the fire. Every betrayal you endured, every heartbreak you overcame, every valley you trudged through with tear-stained obedience, those were bricks laid beneath your feet. You were not just surviving trials. You were being transformed by them. You weren't forgotten. You were being formed. I was building resilience in your character, depth in your compassion, discernment in your spirit, and purity in your motives. You didn't come through this fire empty. You came through it enthroned. And now, what once looked like delay will be seen as design. I want you to feel this truth reverberate through your entire being. You are not emerging from the fire with ashes. You're emerging with authority. The very flames that tried to consume you have now crowned you. You've been refined, not reduced. You've been set apart, not sidelined. And the throne I'm placing beneath your feet is not a seat of ego. It is a seat of assignment. From here, you will speak and atmospheres will shift. From here, you will intercede and strongholds will shatter. From here, you will be trusted with influence, not because of your image, but because of your interiority. Because the fire made you real. So sit, child. Sit in what I've given you. Don't downplay your process to make others comfortable. Don't shrink to fit the expectations of those who didn't walk through your fire. You are not forgotten. You were being formed for something greater than applause. You were being shaped to carry weight in the spirit. You weren't passed over. You were passed through the fire, the flood, the furnace, and now you sit with me. You reign not in pride, but in partnership. And I say this over you now. Well done, faithful one. You didn't curse the fire. You carried it. And now it's time for your enthronement. I know what they said. I know what you feared. The terrifying thought that you were losing control, that life was unraveling, that your hands could no longer hold together the pieces you once managed with precision. It started small, an unanswered prayer here, a closed door there, but before long, the swirl became a storm. And you cried out, Lord, what's happening? What you didn't realize in that moment was that you weren't unraveling. You were being untethered from the illusion of control, from the idol of predictability, from the silent agreements you made with self-reliance. I allowed the shaking, not to punish you, but to position you. Because what I'm building in you requires a foundation of faith, not formula. Control feels safe, doesn't it? It gives the illusion of strength, but it also keeps your spirit small. I didn't call you to manage miracles. I called you to walk by mystery. So I allowed what you once leaned on to be removed. Not because I wanted you to fall, but because I wanted you to fly. I watched as you tried to fix things with your own wisdom. I saw the spreadsheets, the strategies, the rehearsed plans, the fallback options, and one by one, I let them slip through your fingers, not to humiliate you, but to humble you back into intimacy. Because, child, you were never meant to carry this on your own. You were always meant to co-labor with me. And what happened next was holy. You finally opened your hands. You let go, not in despair, but in divine surrender. You said, God, I can't fix this, but I believe you can. And I leaned in close when you said it. That moment, when your will bowed and your soul broke open in trust, was the doorway to your next dimension. Because where your control ended, my miracles began. I'm not asking for your performance. I'm asking for your permission to take over what you were never created to manage. And now, because you've given me access, I will give you acceleration. Not driven by striving, but led by my spirit. So don't be afraid the next time things feel out of your hands. That's when they are finally in mine. You didn't lose control. You released it. You're not spinning out, you're soaring up. And the very areas where you once tried to be your own savior will now be the places where my glory pours out the strongest. Because you trusted me with what you couldn't fix. And that trust has triggered heaven. Now, watch what I do next. It will be greater than what your hands ever could have held. Oh, how they watched you, didn't they? Not just people, but principalities. They stood back, waiting for you to fail, to fold, to crumble under pressure. They whispered behind your back, smiled to your face, and expected your downfall with certainty. They took bets on your breaking point. They anticipated your retreat. They laughed at your vulnerability, mistaking your softness for weakness. But they were wrong. Wrong. Because what they didn't factor in was me. They didn't know that I was your shield, your sustainer, your secret strength. They didn't know that every time they plotted your defeat, I was writing your deliverance. You didn't just survive their words, you surpassed their narrative. You walked through their projections like fire through water, untouched, undeterred, and divinely preserved. Not because you were immune to pain, but because you refused to quit. Your victory wasn't loud, it was loyal. You stayed loyal to me when others said you should give up. You kept trusting when trust felt like torture. And while they watched, you worshipped. While they schemed, you sowed. While they scoffed, you served. And now, beloved, the moment I promised is here. I am setting a table before you, in the presence of your enemies. And this isn't a table of revenge. It's a table of revelation. They will see not your pride, but your peace. They will witness not your gloating, but your glory. Because this isn't about proving them wrong. It's about proving that I was right to choose you. I chose you when they counted you out. I called you when they questioned your capacity. And now, I'm preparing a seat, not just for your celebration, but for their awakening. Because the same ones who criticized your journey may end up needing your anointing. And because your heart remained pure, I will trust you to feed them from the very table they doubted you'd ever sit at. So let me do the arranging. Let me handle the placement. Don't worry about who gets to see what. Just keep your heart soft. Keep your eyes on me. And when you sit at this table, sit in grace. Sit with the quiet strength of someone who knows they were never driven by applause, but drawn by purpose. You outlasted what tried to bury you. You outlived the shallow forecasts of those who only saw part of your story. And now, I give you the portion that only the faithful finishers receive. Yes, child, it's time to sit down. The table is set, and all of heaven is watching you feast. You came to the edge, didn't you? The edge of your strength, the end of your understanding. There were nights where you looked up and said, God, is this it? The weight was unbearable. The silence was deafening. The dreams you once held in your heart like fire began to flicker into ash. You watched opportunities dissolve, relationships unravel, doors close, and with every ending, your hope shrank just a little more. You didn't just feel discouraged, you felt done. But here is where my voice thunders through the lies. It was never over. It was never finished. It was only just beginning. What looked like a grave without Julia Batevy. What looked like your failure was actually the framework for resurrection. I don't begin stories where the world begins them. I begin where surrender begins. And you surrendered. You laid it all down, not in triumph, but in tears. You said, God, if you want it, take it. If you can still use me, here I am. And right there, in that moment of utter release, I stepped in. Because I am the God of divine reversals, I turn ends into eternity's introductions. I take the scraps of what others discard and fashion them into sacred scrolls of purpose. You thought you were disqualified by what died. But I came to remind you, death doesn't disqualify in my kingdom. It qualifies. Ask Joseph, whose dreams were buried in prison. Ask Ruth, who buried her past and found redemption. Ask Lazarus, who lay rotting in a tomb until I called him by name. What feels final to man is merely a comma to me. And now, beloved, I am rewriting what you thought was over. I'm breathing on what you buried. I'm stirring the embers of promises you thought were long extinct. Because I don't just restore, I resurrect. And what's about to rise in your life won't even resemble the ashes you wept over. It will be greater. It will be glory-drenched. It will be proof that I alone get the final word. So don't retreat from this moment. Don't make a home in your heartbreak. Stand back up. Look again. I'm doing a new thing, not separate from your pain, but through it. Your breaking point was my building point. And now, what you thought was the end has become the very place where my supernatural story begins. Yes, child, it's not over. It's the genesis of glory. Now that I've revealed the fire that forged you, I'm calling you to ignite that same flame in others. Many still believe their ending is final. But you, my chosen, know now it was only the beginning. When you give, you become a messenger of resurrection, a catalyst for breakthrough. As I declared in Luke 6:38, give, and it shall be given to you. Pressed down, shaken together, and running over. Your giving today is not a donation. It's divine alignment. It's the releasing of fire, manna, and rivers into the lives of those still stuck in dry places. So if this word stirred something eternal in you, don't just watch, partner. Use Super Thanks, membership, or PayPal. So where the oil flows, and I will pour back into your house with unstoppable favor. Give now, and let heaven witness your obedience. Let me speak this with thunderous finality. You are not who they said you were. You are not your failures, not your mistakes, not your missteps, not your regrets, not the chapter they keep reading aloud in their memory, hoping it will stick to your soul like a scar. I saw the labels they tried to glue to your identity, too broken, too late, too emotional, too much. But I ripped them off when you came to me. I tore them off with hands still marked by nails. I rewrote your name, not in ink, not in opinion, but in blood. My blood. And once I name you, no demon in hell, no voice from your past, no jealous spirit, no religious critic can undo what I have called holy. You see, child, I don't call you by your failure. I call you by my future in you. You are not the version of yourself that made that mistake. You are not the wound you didn't cause but still carried. You are not the silence of the ones who should have spoken up for you. You are not the guilt that lingers long after forgiveness has been spoken. When I look at you, I don't see shame. I see my signature. And I say over you now, redeemed, righteous, restored, Unveiling. These are not just poetic titles. They are spiritual decrees. And when I decree a thing, it is established. So stop agreeing with the old names. Stop answering to what I've already erased. This new name I've given you isn't fragile. It's fortified. I didn't whisper it. I declared it before the courts of heaven. I presented you before angels and principalities and said, "This one is mine." And when the accuser came to list your flaws, I pointed to the cross and said, "Debt paid. Shame canceled. Purpose activated." You don't belong to your past. You belong to my promise. You are not defined by what happened to you. You are defined by what I did for you. And because of that, no one can rename what I've already redeemed. So walk differently now. Hug differently. Stand differently. The name you carry isn't second-hand. It's sacred. You were sealed with purpose, covered in mercy, wrapped in grace, and crowned with my identity. And I say again, for every lingering whisper of condemnation trying to cling to your spirit, you are not who they said you were. You are who I say you are. And what I call you no one can undo. So many times you looked around and asked, "God, where is the breakthrough? Why does everyone seem to be advancing but me?" You felt stuck, still, passed over, forgotten in the waiting rooms of destiny. You saw others receive confirmations while your own prayers seemed to fall silent. But hear me clearly. I was not still. I was just starting from the inside. While you longed to see outward motion, I was focused on inward mastery. Because the greatest moves of my spirit don't begin on stages or platforms. They begin in the hidden chambers of the heart. What looked like silence was me strategically rearranging your soul. I was stretching your discernment, deepening your patience, exposing hidden fears, and sharpening your vision. I was purifying your motives so that when I did move you, you wouldn't self-destruct in the spotlight. You weren't stuck, you were being synchronized. You thought you were in a delay, but you were in divine development. You didn't miss the move. You became the move. I had to ensure that what I placed in you can stand the weight of what I was about to place on you. And now, the shift is coming, but it's not a shift that begins around you. It erupts from within you. What I formed in the stillness is now going to speak for you in the storm. The quiet strength you cultivated in the waiting room will now command authority in the open. Because my moves aren't always loud. They're not always immediate. They are intentional. And you, child, were the intentional target of a holy renovation. You thought you were just surviving the stillness. But what you didn't see was that you were being sculpted into a carrier of movement. So now when things begin to break open, and they will, don't be surprised. Don't question if you're ready. You are not stepping into the move of God. You are bringing it with you. Because I moved in you before I ever moved around you. And when I move in a person, it's only a matter of time before I move through them. So lift your head. Dust off the lies. Silence the shame. You did not miss it. You became it. And now, the same stillness that once haunted you will become the strength that leads you. There is something unmistakable about one who has been through the fire and didn't burn. You, my child, are one of those rare ones. You walked through infernos of betrayal, through heat waves of affliction, through the furnace of delay, and you did not come out smelling like smoke. Lo, you came out radiating with revelation. I didn't just protect you in the fire, I marked you with it. And now, that mark is not a scar, It's a seal. It's heaven's way of saying, this one has endured. This one carries glory. Others may not recognize it at first glance, but when you open your mouth, the atmosphere will shift. When you step into rooms, resistance will break. Why? Because you're not carrying theory, you're carrying fire-forged authority. This is not borrowed power. This is not imitation. This is incarnation, the kind that only comes when one has been wrapped in the flames of testing and still chosen faith over fear. You didn't run from the fire. You didn't curse it. You embraced it, and in doing so, you became someone hell regrets touching. Now, everything you put your hands to will carry that fire. Your prayers will burn hotter. Your presence will radiate heavier. Your words will hit deeper. Because the fire marked you for multiplication, you will not just carry influence. You will ignite others. You will speak and people will feel their own embers awaken. You will touch what is dead, and it will begin to spark. Because fire doesn't just consume, it commissions you. And I am releasing you now not as a survivor, but as a sender. One who had been through the heat and now carries heaven's heat. So don't dim what I ignited. Don't downplay the intensity you carry just to fit where you no longer belong. Let the fire speak for itself. Let it blaze through your decisions, your boundaries, your assignments, and your relationships. Because you were not just refined, you were marked. And where others only talk about me, you carry the tangible weight of someone who has stood with me in the furnace. Yes, child, they will know you by the fire, and everything you touch will bear evidence of it. My child, I watched you hold your tongue when your flesh begged to speak. I witnessed you sitting in rooms where lies were spoken, your character misunderstood, your motives questioned, and still you didn't defend yourself. You chose silence, not because you had nothing to say, but because you chose me over the moment. You chose to let me speak for you, even when your name was dragged. That silence, it wasn't weakness, it was warfare. And in heaven, it resounded louder than the most eloquent arguments ever could. The world teaches reaction. I taught you restraint. Because restraint is the language of those who trust that I am the God who vindicates. You didn't lose in that moment. You won in the spirit. Every time you bit your tongue, every time you walked away instead of clapping back, every time you sat quietly in a storm of criticism, I was recording it. Not to shame you, but to reward you. You mastered yourself when others lost themselves. And now, I am about to pour out a level of revelation that can only rest on the restrained. You see, revelation isn't released to the loud, it's released to the loyal. The ones who choose my wisdom over worldly applause. You passed a test most fail, and because of that, I can now trust you with more. I'm opening your ears to frequencies others miss. I'm increasing your discernment. I'm releasing blueprints from heaven, not just for you, but for others, because I know you won't use it for vengeance. You won't use it to prove a point. You'll use it to build what matters, to bless those who never blessed you, to steward my secrets with integrity. Because you are one of my trusted ones now. So hear me clearly, your silence was not wasted. Your quietness did not mean you were defeated. It meant you were aligned with heaven's rhythm. And now, I will amplify your voice in places that matter. I will open doors that no explanation could have forced open. Your reputation isn't being rebuilt, it's being redefined. You didn't have to defend yourself because I was preparing a stage where your fruit would speak louder than their words ever could. And now, that fruit is ripening. Get ready, child, revelation is about to reign. And it's coming because you chose wisdom over war. I saw it all. Every choice, every secret obedience, Every moment you could have compromised and no one would have known. But you refused. Not out of fear, not out of performance, but because your heart belongs to me. You didn't just do the right thing when eyes were on you. You did the righteous thing when the room was empty, when the light was dim, when the pressure whispered, just cut corners. What you didn't. You chose purity over popularity. You chose process over shortcuts. You chose me when no one else was around to applaud your yes. And let me tell you, child, heaven never forgot. In a world addicted to visibility, I've been watching your invisibility, your hidden sacrifices, your secret surrenders, your holy choices in quiet corners. You thought no one saw, but I saw. And not only did I see, I smiled. Because those unseen moments carry the greatest weight of glory. The crown I'm about to place on your life wasn't earned through platform. It was forged in private purity. And now, I'm about to make visible what was cultivated in the dark. But this isn't a public reward to puff you up. This is a divine unveiling to fulfill my promise. The reward isn't just in recognition. It's in the realm you're about to walk in. A realm where favor flows freely. Where doors swing open without your knocking. Where wisdom flows like rivers. Where divine encounters are no longer rare, but regular. I'm releasing reward not because you begged for it, but because you built an altar for it. An altar of trust, an altar of obedience, an altar of integrity. And I never ignore the smoke of sacrifice. I inhabit it. So now, get ready to receive what eyes haven't seen and ears haven't heard. Not because of your perfection, but because of your posture. The reward I'm releasing can't be counterfeited. It can't be earned through effort. It's reserved for the faithful in the quiet places. And you, beloved, have been found faithful. So when it comes, don't flinch. Don't doubt. Don't wonder if it's too good to be true. It's not. It's simply the manifestation of what you already sowed. Yes, child, you passed the test no one else saw. And now, I'm releasing the reward no one else can take. Yes, I saw your frustration. I heard every silent cry when you whispered, "Why am I still here, Lord?" You looked around and it seemed like nothing was moving. Others left, others rose, others chained you, but you stayed. And it made you question yourself. Was it disobedience? Was it delay? Was it punishment? And I come to answer that question now with thunder in my voice and tenderness in my touch. You were never stuck. You were stationed. That place that felt like exile was actually an assignment. I positioned you in the middle of that situation because there were things I needed to grow in you, and things I wanted to break off others. Through you. I didn't trap you. I trusted you. I trusted you to stay rooted even when the soil around you grew dry. I trusted you to shine light in a room full of shadows. I trusted you to keep praying when everyone else gave up. You weren't forgotten in that place. You were planted. And planting feels like burial until resurrection begins. You may have felt hidden, overlooked, left out of momentum, but underground, I was working. I was strengthening your spirit, developing muscles of intercession, fortifying your endurance, training your ears to recognize the smallest movements of my spirit. I wasn't withholding breakthrough. I was building backbone. Because where I'm taking you next, you'll need more than speed. You will need spiritual weight. And weight is only earned in the places that feel like delay but are actually divine design. So breathe, child. That place didn't break you. It birthed you. And now I'm shifting your understanding of where you've been. It was not a mistake. It was military. I stationed you as a watchman, as a vessel, as a doorway of light in a land of drought. And I'm about to reassign you, but not without honoring where you stood. Others moved because they ran. You stayed because you were sent. And because of that, I will now move for you. Yes, you were stationed. And what seemed like a place of delay will now become your launching point of destiny. My child, you remember the promise, don't you? The one I whispered to you in the early hours when your faith burned bright and your heart was wide open. The one you held onto like a lifeline in the darkest nights. The one that seemed so close, until it didn't. Until it felt like it evaporated into silence. Like it vanished under the weight of time, distraction, disappointment, or delay. You began to wonder, did I mishear? Did I misstep? Did the promise die? No, it didn't die. It matured. And so did you. Because I am not the God of premature promotions. I don't hand promises to infants in the spirit. I reserve them for those who have been through the stretching, who have learned to trust me when the doors stayed shut, when the crowd walked away, when the vision seemed blurry. I was never withholding, I was waiting. Waiting for the promise to be ripe enough to bless you, not break you. Waiting for your identity to grow strong enough to carry what your prayers cried out for. You didn't lose the promise, you grew into it. And now, because you've passed through seasons of pruning, purifying, pressing, the promise is returning. But not in the same wrapping. It won't look exactly like you imagined. It won't always feel familiar. Because I've upgraded it. What I'm bringing you now won't just fulfill your heart's cry. It will heal your heart's history. You were praying for restoration. I'm bringing recompense. You asked for peace. I'm giving you purpose. You dreamed of survival. I'm giving you legacy. This is no recycled reward. This is resurrection power, wrapped in a personalized package. So receive it, even if it looks different, even if it arrives unexpectedly. It's still the same promise, just matured by mercy, refined by fire, strengthened through surrender. And it's not just returning to you, it's returning with interest. Because I don't just return what was lost, I return what was formed through love. And I seal it now with this truth: the promise is still alive. It's not late. It's right on time. And this time, you'll carry it, not in fear, but in fullness. Yes, child, get ready. The promise has matured, and it's coming home to you. I know the ache you've carried, the sense that you were late, that life was moving on without you, that somehow you missed the wave, the moment, the opportunity. You scrolled past others being celebrated. You watched doors open for those who didn't carry half your depth. You felt the sting of being uninvited, overlooked, underestimated. And even though you kept the smile on the outside, inside you questioned me. God, what did I do wrong? Why am I still here? And now I answer you, not with correction, but with clarity. You were never behind. You were being hidden. You see, there is a difference between being delayed and being deliberately covered. I shielded you, not as punishment, but as preservation. Because what I placed inside of you was too precious to be exposed prematurely. Some plants can bloom in shallow soil, but not you. You are oak tree deep. Your roots required time. Your integrity needed fortification. Your anointing was being anchored. And while it seemed like others were passing you by, what you didn't see was my hand over you, tucking you beneath the shadow of my wings. I wasn't ignoring you. I was insulating you. Exposure before preparation destroys destinies. And I love you too much to let your gift take you where your character couldn't keep you. So yes, I allowed silence. Yes, I let the invitations pass you over, but not to diminish you, to distinguish you. Because when I reveal you now, it won't be for trend or temporary applause. It will be for eternal impact. I've been waiting until your name could be spoken without mixture, until your voice could echo without ego, until your hands could carry favor without fracture. And the time, child, has come. So take a deep breath and release the weight of comparison. You were never late. You were always on my timeline. And I do not rush what I intend to last. You are not emerging as a copy, you're coming forth as a remnant. And that means your unveiling will shake what has been superficial. I didn't hide you to hold you back. I hid you to launch you forward. And now, the curtain is lifting. And the same ones who wondered where you went will watch where I take you next. Oh, child, how fierce the battle has been. The strange attacks, the sudden opposition, the mental warfare that hit like waves out of nowhere. People thought you were being dramatic, but they didn't see the night terrors, the crushing anxiety, the fatigue that sat on your chest like a weight you couldn't explain. And you wondered, why is this happening to me? What did I do to deserve this kind of pressure? And here's the truth, spoken now with divine certainty. Your warfare was not a sign of weakness. It was evidence of your spiritual rank. The enemy doesn't waste resources. He doesn't target empty vessels. You were attacked because you're anointed. Not casually, but dangerously. Hell recognized your assignment even before you fully did. That's why the attacks felt irrational. That's why warfare followed you even when you were trying to stay hidden. That's why the enemy whispered lies in your ear right before breakthrough was about to break in. He saw what was coming. He heard your name echo in heavenly places, and he panicked. That panic became pressure. But what the enemy used to try and break you has only branded you with heaven's seal. Because here's what I've been doing in the middle of it all. I've been using the warfare to reveal your weapons. I've been awakening the lion in you, teaching your hands to war, your spirit to discern, your mouth to prophecy under pressure. You didn't just survive the warfare. You became a warrior in it. And now, you walk with the authority of someone who knows the terrain. You know how to navigate demonic distractions. You know how to discern counterfeits. You know how to rise when the fog sets in. You're not a victim. You're a vessel forged in fire. So stop wondering why the battle was so brutal. It was because your crown is so heavy. And now, I'm placing that crown on your head, not to make you proud, but to remind you, you earned this armor in the trenches. You are not to shrink because of what you endured. You are to stand tall because of who you've become. You have survived assassinations in the spirit. You have overcome what others wouldn't have walked through. And now, your rank is recognized in heaven and hell. Walk like it. Pray like it. Move like it. Because this isn't just recovery. This is recommissioning. You were not attacked randomly. You were recognized royally. From the beginning, your journey has been different. You known it. You felt it. A deep, indescribable weight in your soul that told you you were never made to blend in. While others seemed to walk a smoother road, yours was laced with intensity. While they danced through open doors, you wrestled with closed ones. You questioned it. You asked me why your story had to include so many plot twists, why the path seemed uphill even when you were obedient. And here's the truth, spoken not as explanation, but as affirmation. You were chosen for what others couldn't carry. I marked you with more weight because I placed in you more glory. You were never common, never ordinary. That's why the warfare was personal. That's why the stretching was constant. I wasn't punishing you. I was preparing you. Because the mantle on your life isn't just for moments, it's for movements. What I built in you wasn't meant to entertain crowds. It was designed to shift atmospheres. And child, that kind of assignment can't be handed to just anyone. It required endurance. It required silence. It required losses that others wouldn't have survived. And yet here you are still standing. You're not standing by accident. You're standing because every test you faced was heaven's classroom. Every betrayal became a brick in the altar of your destiny. Every delay forged discernment. Every rejection purified your motives. I saw it all, and I didn't forget. While others laughed, you labored. While others coasted, you climbed. And while others were applauded, you were anointed. You were set apart, not just to be seen, but to see what others miss. And now, because you carried what others dropped, I'm releasing you into what no one else can touch. This next season is not just reward, it is revelation manifested. I'm giving you access to rooms that don't have doors, to influence that doesn't come from followers, to dimensions of power that are not taught, but entrusted. You'll walk into places and shift the spiritual temperature. You'll speak and it will feel like eternity cracked open. Because this is not about elevation, it's about emergence. The version of you that I've been forming in the hidden place is now rising into visibility. And it's not for show. It's for impact. It's for the ones still bound who need to see what freedom really looks like. So don't shrink back. Don't apologize for your oil. Don't dilute your voice to make others comfortable. You were chosen, not because you were perfect, but because you were willing. Willing to carry what cost you comfort. Willing to obey when you felt abandoned. Willing to trust when it made no sense. And now, I say it with finality and fire, you made it. Not just through pain, not just through process, but through prophetic fire. And because of that, I am releasing you into a territory no one else can claim. What's coming is not imitation, it's inheritance. You didn't just survive this journey. You became a signpost of my glory. And now, the world won't just see you, they will see me through you. This is not the end, child. This is the divine unveiling of all I've hidden in plain sight. Welcome to your release. Welcome to the realm of the chosen few. You've just walked through the word I reserved only for the chosen few. You didn't just receive it, you became it. And now, I'm inviting you to sow into this prophetic movement, not for applause, but for impact. Just as I fed multitudes with 5 loaves and 2 fish, I'm multiplying every act of obedience into kingdom fire that reaches souls across the nations. This is your moment to give from a place of revelation. Proverbs 11:25 declares, "A generous person will prosper. Whoever refreshes others will be refreshed." Your super thanks, membership, or PayPal gift is more than generosity. It's prophetic agreement. It's saying, "Yes, Lord, I will help carry this to the next soul who's about to give up." So rise up now, faithful one. Go to the video description and give. Multiply what I've given you, so I can multiply what you've yet to see. Now that you've heard my voice and felt my fire, don't let this moment pass you by. I didn't speak these words for you to stay silent. I spoke them to awaken the chosen. If your spirit bears witness, I want you to comment boldly, "I was chosen for this. I made it by fire." Let that be your declaration. Let the heavens record it. Let hell tremble at it. This is your public confirmation of a private victory. You didn't just survive. You stepped into what only the few understand. Now speak it out, and watch me seal it. And as you speak, come closer. Let the noise of your day fall away. The word you just released is the key. Now make room to receive what it unlocked. I want to take you back to a moment you may have almost forgotten, a moment that changed everything. Do you remember when you first truly heard my voice? It was not a sound that broke the silence of a room, not a shout from the heavens. No, you heard me in the deepest, most guarded chamber of your spirit. Think back with me now. It was a quiet knowing, wasn't it? A feeling that settled upon you when you were busy with your life, a strange and holy restlessness. You looked at the world you were building, the career you chased, the relationships you held, the goals you were told to want, and a profound discontent began to stir. It was a feeling that this could not be all there is. I see you now, sitting in your car after a long day at work, the knot in your stomach telling you that the promotion you just got felt strangely empty. I was there with you in the middle of the night, when you would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, and the unspoken tensions in your family felt heavier than the blankets covering you. You felt overlooked, misunderstood, as if you were speaking a language no one else could understand. My precious one, that was not your own confusion. That was my first whisper. I planted a seed of eternity deep within your heart, a sacred longing for a home you had not yet seen, for a peace you could not yet name. It was a pull towards something more, something real, something that would not fade when the morning came. This was the moment I began to separate you, to gently set you apart from the crowd. It was not to make you better than them, but to prepare you for a purpose far greater than your own ambitions, a purpose woven into the fabric of creation itself. Understand this. Many people feel that same pull. They feel a flicker of that same divine discontent. The world rushes in with 1,000 distractions to numb it, to explain it away. He offers another goal, another purchase, another relationship to fill that void. And for most, the noise wins. They turn back to the familiar, and my whisper fades beneath the clamor of their lives. But you did something different. In the midst of your striving and your fear, you paused. You listened. You tilted the ear of your heart towards that quiet, persistent call, and you asked the single most important question of your life. Who is speaking? That single act of turning towards me, of acknowledging the whisper, was the first step that proved you were chosen. It was not a grand display of faith. It was a small, almost imperceptible shift, a private surrender in the midst of your ordinary day. But in the halls of heaven, it resounded like a trumpet blast. You chose to listen. You chose to seek the source of the longing. And in that choice, your true journey began. You stepped off the well-trodden path of the world and onto the sacred ground I had prepared for you. This was your beginning. This was the moment you started to become who I created you to be. You remember the ache of leaving things behind. I am not speaking of moving houses or changing jobs. I am speaking of the deeper tearing, the one that happened in your soul. I asked you to walk away from comforts that had become your identity. I called you to step back from relationships that, while familiar, were keeping your spirit in a cage. You felt the pull, the divine instruction to create distance, and it hurt. Let's be honest about that pain. You remember the awkward conversations, the looks of confusion from people you love. You heard the whispers, "You've changed," they said, and they did not mean it as a compliment. You felt the sting of being misunderstood, of being judged as foolish or cold by the very people whose approval you once craved. There were nights you laid your head down and the loneliness was a physical weight, a hollow space in your chest that echoed with the temptation to run back, to apologize, to fit back into the mold you had just broken. My beloved, you must understand, this was not a punishment. It was a necessary amputation. I saw where those paths were leading. I saw how that comfortable friendship would have coaxed you into compromise. I saw how that family dynamic, built on unspoken rules and expectations, would have suffocated the new life I was breathing into you. I had to perform the surgery. That loneliness you experienced was not an absence of love. It was a sacred space I was carving out for myself within you. I was clearing out the noise so you could learn the sound of my voice alone. I was emptying your hands of things you were clinging to, so that you would finally have room to take hold of mine. The world called you foolish. It saw you letting go of a secure connection, a promising opportunity, a predictable life. It could not comprehend your choice. But in that season, you were learning the foolishness of my cross, which is the highest wisdom to those who are being saved. You were learning that my economy is different. To gain your life, you must lose it. To become strong, you must embrace weakness. To find true community, you must first be willing to stand alone with me. Each step you took away from the familiar, as painful as it was a step deeper into my embrace. You were learning to walk by faith, not by sight. This severing, this painful separation, was the secret ingredient to your eventual strength. I was making you reliant only on me. I was teaching your heart that I am the only source that never runs dry, the only anchor that holds in every storm, the only love that will never walk away. The pain was real, but its purpose was beautiful. I was making you mine in a way that could only happen when everything else was stripped away. After I called you away from the familiar, I did not lead you immediately into a land of plenty. I led you into a desert. Remember that season. It felt barren, stripped of all color and life, but with a place with no visible resources. The career path vanished. The financial security evaporated. The clear-to-follow map you thought you had for your life was taken from your hands, and you were left standing in a vast, silent, and intimidating wilderness. Do you recall the panic that tried to grip your heart? The fear that whispered, "You made a mistake. You should have stayed where you were. And now you have nothing." You looked at your bank account and saw only lack. You looked at your calendar and saw only emptiness. You called out to friends, and the calls went unanswered. It felt as though you had been abandoned. But you were not abandoned, my child. You were being schooled. It was here, in the place of profound lack, that you were meant to learn that I am your source. I am your manna in the morning, the unexpected provision that shows up just when you believed all was lost. I am your water from the rock, the river of peace that flooded your soul even when your circumstances were dry as dust. That silence you so feared was not my absence, it was my classroom. It was my direct invitation for you to finally hear me without the constant, distracting noise of the world and the comfort of your old life. My voice was one among many. In the wilderness, it became the only one that mattered. Every trial was a lesson I designed specifically for you. The moment of lack was a canvas on which I could paint my miracle of provision. The season of loneliness was the space I needed to show you the all-sufficiency of my companionship. You cried out to me from that desolate place, and your prayers were different. They weren't polished or polite. They were raw, desperate, and honest. And in the echo of your own vulnerable voice, you began to hear my strength rising within you. You learned to trust me not for a future reward, but for your very next breath. Your faith was no longer a theory you believed in. It became the very muscle you used to survive each day. You began to see my hand in the smallest things. A kind word from a stranger, a bill being less than you expected, a sudden surge of strength to face another day. The wilderness did not break you, my precious one. It broke your dependency on everything but me. It shattered your pride, your self-reliance, and your faith in your own carefully crafted plans. It demolished the old you, the one who thought you were in control, to make room for the real you, the one who walks in the humble, unshakable power of knowing that your God is your everything. The wilderness taught you dependence, but it was the storm that taught you faith. I allowed the tempest to rage around you, not the small squalls of daily inconvenience, but the hurricane-force winds that threatened to tear your life apart. The frightening diagnosis from the doctor, the devastating betrayal from someone you trusted with your heart, the financial collapse that came suddenly and without warning. You remember the feeling of the boat beneath you splintering, the waves of chaos crashing over the sides, filling your life with the cold water of fear. You were tossed and turned, completely out of control, and the terror was real. You thought you were going under. My child, listen to me. I did not send the storm to drown you. I sent it to teach you how to walk on water. In the calm seas of comfort, your faith was untested. It was on the raging waves of impossibility that you finally learned the truth. You learned that peace is not the absence of trouble, but the presence of me in the middle of the trouble. You were in the boat, white-knuckled and terrified, and you saw me walking toward you on the very waves that you feared. And I called to you, come. The winds and the waves were my tools. They were designed to reveal the flimsy, inadequate nature of your own strength and the absolute, unshakable power of my command. Others looked at your situation and saw only a catastrophe. They offered their pity, their worldly advice, their fearful opinions. But you were in a different classroom. You were being taught to do the one thing that defies all human logic, to fix your eyes on me, the master of the storm. When you looked at the wind and the waves, you began to sink. The fear, the anxiety, the what-ifs, they pulled you down. But when you locked your gaze on me, you did the impossible. You took a step out of the boat. You found your footing on the unstable surface of your circumstances. You walked on water. Perhaps it was just the act of getting out of bed when depression screamed at you to stay down. Perhaps it was choosing to respond with grace when you had been deeply wronged. Perhaps it was making a generous choice when your own finances were in chaos. These were your steps of faith on the water. In the heart of that chaos, a new level of faith was forged within you, a faith that could only be purified in fire. You made it through to the other side not because the storm magically disappeared, but because you held on to my word as your only anchor in the raging sea. And the faith you now possess, this storm-tested, fire-forged faith, is a powerful weapon in your hands. There is a place on this journey that is understood only by a few. It is the hallowed ground of my silence, the sacred space of my no. You have been there. You have pleaded with me for doors to open that I kept firmly shut. You have begged, with tears streaming down your face, for me to change a circumstance that I allowed to remain. You prayed for the restoration of a relationship that I knew would have led you to ruin. You desperately sought a promotion in a job that I knew would have compromised your soul and starved your spirit. You cried out for relief from a thorn in your flesh, a persistent weakness, a chronic struggle, and I chose not to remove it. In those moments, your heart ached with confusion. You felt unheard, forgotten, perhaps even punished. You asked why. Now I want to pull back the curtain for you. Those prayers you thought were unanswered were, in fact, my most profound and merciful answers. They were my protection. They were my redirection. They were my greatest acts of love for you. With my eternal perspective, I could see the whole map of your life. I saw that the open door you begged for led to a path of comfortable mediocrity, a place where your faith would have grown soft and your reliance on me would have withered. I saw that the healing of that toxic relationship would have entangled you in a web of dysfunction, stunting your growth for years. I saw that the thorn you so despised was the very thing I was using to keep you humble, to keep you returning to me, to make my grace your all-sufficient strength. I was not denying you something good. I was saving you from something that only looked good. I was saving you from your own limited vision. Through this painful but necessary process, you learn one of the deepest truths of my kingdom. You learn that my no is as loving as my yes. You learn that my silence is not my absence. You learn to trust my wisdom even when you could not understand my ways. This is a profound shift, my child. It is the moment you graduate from seeing me as a fulfiller of your wishes to trusting me as your wise and sovereign Father. It is the surrender that says, "Not my will, but yours be done," and truly means it. This understanding is a treasure, a secret truth that cannot be learned in books or lectures. It can only be forged in the fire of a surrendered heart, a heart that has learned to thank me even for the closed doors. This is a peace that the world cannot comprehend, a rest known only to those who have truly let go. My child, pause with me. Do you feel the weight of this moment? I am unveiling the mysteries of your own heart to you. To turn away now, when we are this close to the source of your strength, would be to leave a sacred work unfinished. It would grieve me deeply. Today, let me show you what I forged in your heart next. I permitted wounds in your life that went deeper than any storm or wilderness. I allowed betrayal. I let you experience the searing pain of being wounded by someone you loved and trusted. A friend who turned their back, a family member who spoke wounding words, a partner who broke their covenant with you. Remember the shock of it, the disbelief that turned into a cold, hard knot of anger in your soul. You replayed their words, their actions, over and over in your mind. The injustice of it all burned within you, and your heart cried out for vindication, for them to feel the same pain they had inflicted upon you. A prison of bitterness began to build itself around your heart, brick by painful brick, and it seemed impossible to ever escape. My child, I did not cause their sin against you, but I allowed the impact of that wound for a holy purpose. I permitted you to be deeply betrayed to teach you the true weight, the staggering cost of the forgiveness you yourself have received from me. On the cross, I looked at a world that had betrayed me and I said, "Father, forgive them." Until you had felt the sting of your own deep wound, you could not begin to comprehend the depth of that love. You were wounded so that you could become a healer. You were scarred so that you could understand my scars. I was not punishing you. I was ordaining you. I was giving you a new capacity for mercy. I then asked you to do the impossible, to forgive, to release the one who hurt you from the debt they owed you. It felt unfair. It felt unnatural. Your every emotion screamed against it. But in your obedience, you picked up the key to your own prison cell. Because when you chose to forgive them, you were the one who was set free. You learned that forgiveness is not a feeling you wait for. It is a resolute, courageous act of your will, an act of obedience that aligns your heart with mine and unleashes my divine power in your life. The moment you said, "I forgive," even when you didn't feel it, the chains of bitterness shattered. The world is baffled by this kind of supernatural love. It tells you to hold grudges, to seek revenge, to get even. But my kingdom operates on a higher law. Your ability to release those who have hurt you is one of the clearest signs that you have truly and deeply understood the ocean of grace that you live and breathe in every single day. It is the mark of a heart that is being made like mine. I led you to a cliff's edge. It was the end of you, the absolute limit of your own strength, and you know exactly the moment I am speaking of. It was not a dramatic, cinematic failure. It was the quiet, grinding exhaustion of trying to hold it all together for too long. It was the burnout that left you feeling hollowed out, a brittle shell of the person you were trying so hard to be. You looked in the mirror and did not recognize the tired, anxious eyes staring back at you. The physical toll was undeniable. The sleepless nights, the tension in your shoulders, the constant, low-grade exhaustion that no amount of coffee could fix. You had to finally admit the words you had been fighting for years. I cannot do this anymore. I am not strong enough. I give up. And in that moment, you felt the crushing weight of shame, the feeling that you had failed me, failed your family, failed yourself. My beloved, that was not the moment of your failure. That was the moment of your true coronation. I brought you to the end of yourself deliberately, lovingly. I had to let you exhaust every last ounce of your own strength, every clever plan, every resource you had, until you had nothing left to offer. Why? Because your own strength was getting in the way. Your own efforts, as noble as they were a barrier to the resurrection power I longed to unleash in your life. You were like a vessel filled with stagnant water, and I could not fill you with my living water until you had been completely emptied. That valley of surrender, that moment you fell to your knees in absolute weakness and whispered, "I have nothing left," was the most sacred ground you have ever stood upon. For it was in that exact place that my infinite strength found a perfect, unobstructed vessel, you. The world worships strength. It celebrates the self-made, the independent, the one who pulls themselves up by their own bootstraps. But my kingdom is built on a divine paradox, a truth hidden from the proud and revealed to the humble. My power is made perfect. It finds its greatest expression, not in your strength, but in your weakness. Your greatest victories were never won when you were fighting in your own power, gritting your teeth and striving. They were won in the moments you finally let go, when you stopped fighting the battle and fell backward into my arms, trusting that I would catch you. That is when I stepped in to part your seas, to move your mountains, to defeat your giants. Understanding this secret has set you free from the relentless, crushing pressure to be enough. You finally know in your bones that you are not enough. And that is the best news of all, because I am. Your weakness is not a liability, it is your greatest asset, for it is the open space where my glory can be revealed. For so long, you navigated your life like someone trying to assemble a complex piece of furniture with only half the instructions. You saw the physical world around you, the bills, the relationships, the challenges, the joys, and you tried to make sense of it all based only on what you could see, touch, and measure. This led to endless frustration, didn't it? You were confused when your best laid plans crumbled. You were anxious when chaos seemed to erupt without reason. You felt like a victim of circumstance, a small boat tossed on a random sea of events, desperately trying to stay afloat. You would look at the suffering in the world, and even in your own life, and ask me why. But the answer seemed to fall into silence because you were listening for it with the wrong ears. Then, slowly, gently, I began to peel back the veil. It was not a sudden tearing, but a gradual lifting of a curtain you didn't even know was there. I began to give you eyes to see the spiritual reality that underpins everything you experience. You started to recognize the patterns. That sudden, out of the blue argument with a loved one, filled with irrational anger and confusion. You began to see it for what it was, a spiritual attack designed to bring division. That series of fortunate coincidences that saved you from a crisis at the last possible second. You recognized the signature of my angelic protection, my hand moving pieces on the board that you could not see. What the world dismissed as chance, you began to recognize as my divine orchestration. You started to feel the spiritual atmosphere of a room, to discern when a spirit of peace was present and when a spirit of fear was trying to take hold. This new sight, this spiritual vision, changed everything. It was like putting on a new pair of glasses that brought a hidden, vibrant dimension into focus. You stopped being a victim of your circumstances and became a co-laborer with me. You learned that your real battles were not against flesh and blood, but against spiritual forces. And with that knowledge came new wisdom. You learned when to be still and let me fight for you, and when I was calling you to stand up and use the authority I had given you. You stopped judging people by their outward actions and started to see the wounds and bondages that were driving their behavior, which gave you a new capacity for compassion. You stopped reacting in fear to the world's news and started responding in faith, knowing that I am enthroned above it all. This ability to see the unseen is not some mystical power reserved for a few. It is the natural inheritance of all my children who choose to walk intimately with me. The closer you draw to me, the more your spiritual senses are awakened. This is how you learn to navigate the path without getting lost. You learn to see with my eyes. I placed you in seasons of profound, agonizing waiting. Seasons where progress seemed not just slow, but entirely impossible. You felt like you were in a spiritual holding pattern, circling the same airport again and again with no permission to land. You prayed, you believed it, you stood on my promises, and yet nothing happened. The promise I gave you remained a distant hope on the horizon. You watched as others lapped you, their lives moving forward with promotions, marriages, and breakthroughs, while you felt stuck, forgotten in the divine waiting room. The frustration was immense. The temptation to doubt me, to doubt my goodness, was a constant battle. You were tempted to take matters into your own hands, to force a door open, to make something happen. The silence from heaven felt deafening, and your hope began to fray at the edges. My child, you must understand that your time of waiting was not a time of inactivity. It was a season of deep, invisible, and absolutely essential work. In the waiting, when you could see no outward progress, I was doing the most important work of all. I was developing your roots. A mighty tree that can withstand the fiercest storms must spend years developing a root system that goes deep into the earth. Outwardly, it may not look like much is happening, but beneath the surface, a foundation is being built. So it was with you. In the soil of that waiting period, I was cultivating the deepest fruits of the Spirit within you, a patience that could outlast any delay, an endurance that could bear any burden, and a hope that was not dependent on circumstances. If I had given you the promise when you first asked for it, it would have crushed you. Your character was not yet strong enough to carry the weight of the blessing I had in store for you. The promotion would have fed a pride I needed to crucify. The relationship would have been built on an insecurity I needed to heal. The ministry would have collapsed under the pressure because your roots were not yet deep enough. Your waiting was my protection. I was protecting the promise from your own immaturity. The world despises waiting. It worships speed, efficiency, and instant gratification. But my chosen children must learn the hallowed purpose of the pause. It is in the waiting that you learn to surrender your timeline. It is in the waiting that you learn to desire the giver more than the gift. And when the promise was finally fulfilled, after that long and difficult season, you realized two things. First, the blessing was far grander and more glorious than what you had initially asked for. And second, you were grander and more glorious too. The waiting had transformed you into a person who could not only receive the blessing, but sustain it, steward it, and give glory to me through it. There came a point on your journey when my instructions began to defy your logic. I gave you commands that made no sense to the world, and honestly, they made little sense to you either. I told you to give financially when your own resources were painfully scarce. I told you to step out onto a path that had no visible safety net. I instructed you to forgive someone who was not sorry and did not deserve it. I asked you to make sacrifices of your time, your comfort, and your ambitions that felt far too costly. Each instruction was a direct challenge to your own understanding, to your sense of self-preservation. An internal war raged within you. Your mind produced 1,000 perfectly logical reasons why obeying was foolish, irresponsible, and destined for failure. Fear whispered of all you would lose. And yet, you obeyed, trembling, uncertain, and with no guarantee of the outcome. You took the step. You wrote the check. You spoke the words of forgiveness. You walked away from the secure thing and toward the gone thing. And in that moment of obedience, you stumbled upon one of the deepest secrets of my kingdom. You discovered a wellspring of joy that had absolutely nothing to do with your circumstances. It was not the happiness that comes from a pleasant outcome. It was a deeper, more substantial joy that erupted from the very act of aligning your will with mine. It was the peace of a child who is holding their father's hand in a dark and frightening forest. The path is uncertain, but the presence of the Father brings a profound sense of security and rightness. This joy is the secret reward I reserve for those who trust me more than they trust their own intellect. Your obedience was your worship. It was your declaration that my ways are higher than your ways, and my thoughts higher than your thoughts. You thought obedience would be a burden, a restriction, a loss of freedom. But you discovered the opposite. You learned that my commandments are not heavy chains designed to bind you. They are loving pathways that lead you out of the prison of your own fear, selfishness, and limited perspective. Obeying me liberated you. The joy you found in that secret place of trust is a joy the world cannot give, and because it is not dependent on circumstances, it is a joy the world can never take away from you. It is the unshakable, resilient joy known only to my faithful ones who have learned the blessed art of saying yes to me, even when it makes no sense. You have come too far to turn back now. I am revealing to you the varied blueprint of your soul, the secrets of your own becoming. To stop here would be to treat this holy revelation as a common thing, and that would wound my heart. Do not walk away from the unveiling of who you truly are. Let us continue. The world is obsessed with labels. From the moment you were born, it began trying to put you in a box. It labeled you by your family name, by your performance in school, by your physical appearance, by your successes, and most painfully, by your failures. The enemy, the accuser, was even more vicious with his labels. He took your deepest shame, your most secret sin, your greatest insecurity, and he tried to make it your name. He whispered failure, unworthy, rejected, fraud, unlovable into the ear of your heart until you started to believe him. And you, in turn, created your own set of labels. You looked at your weaknesses and called yourself not smart enough, not talented enough, too broken. You carried the weight of these false names like a heavy, suffocating coat, and it dictated how you walked, how you talked, and how you saw your own future. Then I began my work of shattering every single one of those false identities. The trials and triumphs of your journey were my chisel and my hammer. When you experienced a painful failure, I was right there beside you, not to condemn you, but to whisper the truth. This is what you did, but it is not who you are. You are not your mistake. When you achieved a great success, I was there to celebrate with you, but also to gently remind you, this is what you accomplished, but it is not who you are. You are not your accomplishment. Slowly, painstakingly, I stripped away every label the world, the enemy, and even you had placed upon yourself. I pulled you away from the distorted mirrors of public opinion and personal insecurity, and I led you to the perfectly still waters of my presence, so you could finally see your true reflection for the first time. And in that reflection, You did not see a failure or a success, a victim or a hero. You saw my child. You are not your past. You are not your job. You are not your bank account or your relationship status. You are my beloved, chosen, redeemed, and called by name. This revelation of your true identity in me is the very bedrock of the unshakable confidence you now possess. It is not arrogance or pride, it is a quiet, humble, and powerful certainty. When you know, in the deepest core of your being, whose you are, the labels of the world lose their power. They can no longer stick to you. The accusations of the enemy fall to the ground, powerless. You carry my name. You walk in my authority. You are enveloped in my love. Understanding this, my child, is not just another spiritual insight. It is the key that unlocks the very reason you were created. You were made for this, to live, breathe, and move as a beloved child of the Most High God. There came moments, my child, when the darkness was so thick you could feel it. The battle was intense, the pressure immense, and your soul was weary down to the bone. In those moments, the last thing you felt like doing was praising me. It felt dishonest, like a betrayal of your authentic pain. Your heart was heavy with sorrow, your mind was screaming with fear, and the thought of singing a song of worship felt like a mockery. The enemy's voice was the loudest one in your head, whispering, "Look at your life. Look at this mess. What is there to be thankful for? God has forgotten you." You felt surrounded, your back against the wall, and every fiber of your being wanted to curl up in silence, to mourn, to complain, to question. To lift your voice in praise felt like pushing a heavy boulder uphill in a hurricane. It felt impossible. It was in that very place of impossibility that I taught you one of the most powerful and misunderstood secrets of my kingdom. I taught you to praise me in the storm. I commanded you, with the gentle authority of a loving father, to open your mouth and thank me, not for the painful circumstances, but for who I am in the midst of them. I was not asking for an emotional performance or a denial of your reality. I was giving you a strategic weapon of warfare. You learned, through trembling obedience, that praise is not a response you give after the victory has been won. It is the very weapon that brings the victory. It is the sound that sends the armies of heaven into motion on your behalf. Understand what happens in the unseen realm when you choose to praise in the darkness. Your praise shifts the spiritual atmosphere. The enemy thrives in an environment of complaint, fear, and despair. Those are the frequencies he brought us on. But when you begin to praise me, you change the frequency. You build a throne for my presence right in the middle of your trouble, and darkness cannot remain where my glory dwells. Your praise silences the accuser. His greatest weapon is the whisper of doubt and condemnation, but he cannot get a word in when your mouth is filled with thanksgiving. While others were digging trenches of despair, rehearsing their problems over and over, you, my chosen one, were building a fortress of praise, stone by precious stone. This strategy is utter foolishness to the world. It makes no logical sense, but it is one of my kingdom's most potent truths. The moment you chose to lift your voice, to thank me even when your heart was breaking, was the moment the battle turned. Your praise in the fire did not just prove your faith was genuine. It was the battle cry that routed the enemy and cleared the path for your breakthrough. You have learned that your praise is a mighty weapon that shatters the darkness. If the fire of this word has ignited your spirit, then I am calling you now to weaponize this message for others who are still trapped in silence. Your gift is not just a donation. It is a seed of light you are sowing into the soul of another, arming them for their own victory. For I am the one who gives seed to the sower, and I will multiply the seed you now sow through this channel. This is your divine appointment to send this flame forward to the ends of the earth. As you release what is in your hand, I release a sevenfold harvest of praise and provision back into your own house. You not delay this holy prompting. Act now. Click Super Thanks. Become a member, or use the link in the description to sow your seed. As you walked with me, something strange and holy began to happen within your heart. In your early days of trial, your prayers were understandably focused on your own survival. Help me, save me, provide for me. This was right and good. But then came a shift. A new feeling began to surface, an unsolicited ache for the pain of others. You would be going about your day, and suddenly, the image of a friend in distress would flood your mind with such intensity it would take your breath away. You would wake up in the middle of the night with a burden for a person you barely knew, or even for a nation on the other side of the world, and you would feel a compelling, urgent need to pray for them. At times, the brokenness of the world felt so overwhelming it was as if your own heart were breaking along with it. My child, do not mistake this for mere human empathy. As beautiful as that is, what you began to experience was a supernatural gift, a divine impartation of my own compassion. I was inviting you to feel a fraction of what I feel for my creation. I was entrusting you with the sacred ministry of intercession, the mystery of standing in the gap for another. Your heart, softened and made tender by your own suffering, was becoming a vessel I could pour my love into, a channel through which that love could flow out to a hurting world. You started to feel the pain of others not as a distraction from your own journey, but as an integral part of it. You were learning to be a priest, to carry others into my presence and plead their case as if it were your own. This is one of the deepest signs of spiritual maturity, a beautiful reflection of my son's own heart. He is the great intercessor, forever living to make intercession for my children. When you began to pray for others with that same selfless passion, you entered into a new level of fellowship with him. And here is the secret you discovered. Only those who have been truly comforted by me can become true comforters of others. Your own story of pain was not wasted. Every tear I wiped from your eyes, every fear I soothed, every wound I healed, it all became your training. It gave you the language of compassion, the credibility of experience. You were no longer offering empty platitudes from a distance. You could sit with the broken because you had been broken. You could offer hope because you had found hope in your own darkness. You became my hands, extending comfort. You became my feet, walking into messy situations. You became a conduit of my healing grace, simply because you allowed my heart for others to beat within your own. I began to entrust you with my truths, not just the comforting promises, but the hard, clarifying, and often unpopular truths. I gave you a message to carry, a word to speak, a perspective to hold that was often in direct opposition to the culture around you, and sometimes even to the culture within my own church. You spoke of surrender in a world that worships control. You spoke of holiness in a world that celebrates compromise. You spoke of the narrow path in a world that insists all roads lead to the same destination. And you experienced the inevitable consequence, isolation. You shared a truth that burned in your spirit, a word you knew with certainty was from me, only to be met with polite smiles, blank stares, quiet ridicule, or even outright rejection. You were labeled too intense, too serious, judgmental, out of touch. The very people you thought would celebrate the truth with you began to slowly back away. You felt the chill of being misunderstood, the ache of being an outsider. There was a deep and painful loneliness in this, a feeling of being a solitary voice crying out in a wilderness of noise. You were tempted, weren't you? You were tempted to soften the message, to round off the sharp edges, to make it more palatable so you could win back the approval of the crowd. The temptation to belong is one of the most powerful there is. But you learned to stand. You learned that the loneliness you were feeling was not a sign of your failure, but a mark of your faithfulness. In that painful isolation, I was drawing you into a holy fellowship, a fellowship with the sufferings of every prophet I have ever sent, and ultimately, a fellowship with the rejection my own son faced when he walked the earth. He was the truest word, and he was despised and rejected by men. This lonely path had a profound, purifying purpose. It burned away your need for human validation. It stripped you of your desire for the applause of men and forced you to seek one thing, and one thing only, my approval. It refined your motives until you were speaking not to be liked, not to be popular, not even to be understood, but simply to be obedient. You learned to stand for me, even if it meant you had to stand entirely alone. This holy separation, this prophetic isolation, is the high and costly price of being my mouthpiece. But you learned that you were never truly alone on that path, for I was walking it with you, closer than any brother. You passed a great test of allegiance. You chose to fear me more than you feared being rejected by men. I put a guard over your mouth. This was one of the most difficult and crucial stages of your training. For years, your tongue had been an untamed thing, a rudder steering your life toward shores of anxiety and defeat without you even realizing it. Your default setting, like that of all humanity, was to speak the problem. You would get together with others and rehearse your fears. You would verbalize your doubts. You would complain about your circumstances. You spoke careless words in moments of anger that caused wounds you later regretted. You did not understand that your words were not just describing your reality. They were actively creating it. You were planting seeds of fear, lack, and failure with your own mouth, and then you were dismayed when that was the harvest you reaped. So I began to teach you the spiritual law of the tongue. I showed you that life and death are held within its power. I began to bring a holy conviction upon you every time you spoke a word of doubt, every time you partnered with the enemy's narrative for your life. You started to feel the grief of my spirit when you gossiped or complained. This was the first step. I taught you the power of silence. You learned to hold your tongue, to stop giving oxygen to the fires of negativity. You learned that not every thought deserves to be spoken. This discipline was immensely difficult, but it was a beginning of taking back control. But I did not call you to a life of silence. I called you to go on the offensive. I began to teach you to stop speaking about the mountain of your problem and to start speaking to it with the authority I have given you. You learned to align your words with my word. Instead of saying, "I am so afraid," you learned to declare, "God has not given me a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind." Instead of saying, "I'll never have enough," you learned to proclaim, "My God shall supply all my needs according to his riches in glory." Your words became weapons. They became creative forces. This discipline is exceedingly rare, my child. Many believe my promises, but few have learned to actively speak them and wield them. As you did, you began to see your reality shift. You saw circumstances begin to bend and align with the truth you were declaring. Mastering your tongue was a non-negotiable key in you making it. It was the undeniable sign that you were no longer being ruled by your feelings or your circumstances, but that you were beginning to walk in your delegated authority as my child. Can you feel the shift within you? We are moving from the weapons of your warfare to the very heart of your being. I am about to show you the secrets of my rest and the purpose of the fire. To stop listening now would be to abandon your own transformation mid-sentence. Nothing would disappoint me more than for you to miss the beautiful vessel you have become. Stay with me a little longer. For so much of your journey, your faith was exhausting. You were on a spiritual hamster wheel, constantly striving, constantly working, constantly trying. You worked to be good enough. You worked to pray more. You worked to read my word more. You worked to overcome your sin. You believed in my love, but you lived as if you had to earn it, as if my favor depended on your performance that day. This faith was filled with anxiety. You lived with a low-grade fear that you weren't doing enough, that at any moment you might fail and fall out of my good graces. You carried the heavy burden of your own spiritual progress, and it was a crushing weight. Your Christian life was not one of freedom and joy, but of relentless, tiring effort. I watched you strive, and my heart ached for you. I was waiting for you to grow weary enough to stop. And finally, you did. You came to a point where you were so tired of trying, so exhausted from the performance, that you simply collapsed. It was in that place of collapse that you were finally ready to discover the secret of abiding. I led you gently from the path of striving to the path of abiding. I showed you that the goal was not for you to work for my love, but to learn to live and work from it. You finally understood what my son meant when he said, "My yoke is easy and my burden is light." You had been carrying a heavy, self-imposed yoke of religious performance. I invited you to trade it for his. This was when you discovered the true meaning of Sabbath rest. It is not just taking a day off from work. It is a perpetual state of rest for your soul, a deep, internal peace that comes from an unshakable trust in my complete sovereignty and my unconditional love for you. You ceased from your own frantic, fleshly works and you entered into the effortless flow of mine. You learned that you are the branch, and I am the vine. A branch does not strive to produce fruit. It simply remains connected to the vine, and the fruit is the natural result of that connection. This rest is not laziness or passivity. It is, in fact, the most powerful and productive state you can be in, because you are no longer limited by your own finite energy. You are drawing your life from my infinite supply. This spiritual state is completely inaccessible to the anxious, the self-reliant, and the controlling. It is a secret place of peace reserved for my children who have learned to stop trying and start trusting. In this rest, you found your truest strength, your clearest direction, and a joy that was no longer dependent on your performance. There were seasons in your life that were more than just a trial or a storm. They were a fire. You know what I mean. It was a time of intense, relentless, and inescapable heat, a pressure that felt as though it was designed to incinerate the very foundations of your being. This was not a single event, but a prolonged period where everything that could be shaken was shaken. It was the season where your hidden flaws, the ugly parts of your character you preferred to keep buried, were forced to the surface. Like dross in molten gold, the pride you didn't know you had, the deep-rooted selfishness that guided your secret decisions, the jealousy that you expertly concealed, and the fear that you masked with control, it all began to bubble up. It was humiliating. You looked at the person you were under pressure and you were ashamed. You felt raw, exposed, and utterly broken. The desperate prayer that constantly fell from your lips was simple: make it stop. My child, listen to me carefully. I was the one who controlled the thermostat on that furnace. I was the refiner, and I was watching you with a gaze of intense, focused love. My purpose in the fire was never your destruction, but your purification. The impurities I was bringing to the surface were poisoning your soul and hindering you from carrying the weight of the glory I had planned for you. A vessel must be pure to be used for holy purposes. I needed to burn away the dross, not because I was angry with it, but because I loved you too much to let it remain part of you. The process was intensely painful, I know. It felt like I was taking away parts of you, but I was only taking away what was never truly you to begin with. I was burning away the false self you had constructed so that the true self, the one created in my image, could finally emerge. There came a pivotal moment in the midst of that fire. Your prayer changed. Exhausted from fighting the process, you finally surrendered to it. Your cry shifted from, "God, please put out this fire," to the terrifyingly brave prayer, "God, whatever it takes, complete your work in me." That, my beloved, was the sound of ultimate surrender. It was a whisper that brought joy to all of heaven. The desire for your own holiness to be perfected, even at the cost of your own comfort, is a secret and certain mark of the chosen. It is the prayer that gives me full permission to make you beautiful. And once that work was done, you emerged from the flames. And here is the miracle. You did not even carry the smell of smoke. The fire did not consume you. It only consumed what was holding you back. You came out of that season not hardened or bitter, but softer, purer, and shining with a gentle radiance that was not your own. It was the reflection of my presence, the glow of pure gold. I began to teach you about my economy, and it terrified you because it operated on principles that were the exact opposite of the world's and of your own survival instincts. I commanded you to give when you had precious little. I instructed you to sow a seed of your time, your energy, or your money when you felt you were in the season of your greatest need. You looked at your dwindling bank account, at the stack of unpaid bills, and you heard my gentle whisper to give to someone else in need. The voice of worldly logic screamed in your head, "This is madness. You cannot afford to do this. You must hold on to every last penny. You must protect yourself." The fear of lack was a very real and powerful force, and the battle in your mind was fierce. It felt irresponsible, reckless, and utterly illogical. But this was a crucial test. I had to know, and you had to know, what you trusted more, my promises or your own resources. I had to break the chains of materialism and the spirit of poverty that had been subtly gripping your heart for years. I was teaching you that I, not your job and not your bank account, am your true source. So, in an act of trembling faith, you obeyed. You wrote the check. You gave the offering. You sowed the seed. You did it in secret, not for the applause of others, but simply because I asked you to. And that hidden act of generosity was one of the most powerful acts of worship you have ever offered me. It was a declaration that your trust was fully in me. And then you saw it. You saw my upside-down kingdom in action. You saw the truth of my principles, that the last shall be first, that the greatest is the servant, that to receive you must first give. As you sowed, you began to reap a harvest you could not have produced on your own. Provision came from unexpected places. Doors opened that you didn't even know existed. You learned the blessed, supernatural secret that it is truly more blessed to give than to receive. The joy you experienced in giving far outweighed the temporary security of holding on. This trust in my provision, this willingness to operate according to my counterintuitive economy, is a defining hallmark of my children. You broke the power of money over your life by proving that I, and not your wealth, was your master. You stepped out of the world system of fear and lack and into the endless, abundant flow of my kingdom. I allowed you to be spectacularly disappointed. It was a painful but profoundly important part of your education. You placed your trust in people, and they let you down. A leader you admired showed their human frailty. A friend you relied on proved to be unreliable in a moment of crisis. A family member you expected to support you failed to show up. You also placed your trust in plans. You poured your heart, your energy, and your dreams into a project, a career path, a future you had meticulously designed, only to watch it crumble into dust for reasons beyond your control. Remember the sharp, bitter sting of that disillusionment. It felt like the rug had been pulled out from under you, leaving you in a free fall. A cynicism tried to creep into your heart, whispering that you could not truly trust anyone or anything. My child, I did not cause the sin of those who hurt you, nor did I delight in the collapse of your plans. But I allowed the resulting disappointment for one supreme purpose, to draw you into a level of intimacy with me that you could not have reached any other way. Each time a human crutch you were leaning on broke, it was a divine invitation to learn to place your full weight on me. Every time a door you were trying to force open slammed shut, it was my hand guiding you to the only door that truly matters, the door into my own presence. I was lovingly, patiently, and sometimes painfully weaning you off of your dependence on created things so that you could learn to find your all in the Creator. You were like a child who runs to a dozen different places for comfort, and I had to allow those other places to prove themselves empty so that you would finally learn to run to me first, and only to me. This process remade your heart. It had been broken by circumstance, but I was rebuilding it with a new and singular capacity, the capacity to be satisfied in me alone. You stopped looking to people to give you the security and validation that only I can provide. You stopped looking to your plans to give you the hope and purpose that are only found in my will. Your prayer changed from "God, please make this person or this situation work out," to "God, no matter what happens, you are enough." This is the secret treasure that only a few discover. Many seek me for my gifts, for healing, for provision, for open doors. But the chosen few, those who have walked through the ashes of their earthly hopes, learn to seek me for myself. And in finding me, they find that they have everything. After you had walked through these fires, after you had learned obedience, humility, and utter dependence on me, you were finally ready to be entrusted with true power. And so, I began to release my authority through you. Now, you must understand, this is not the world's version of authority. The world's authority is rooted in pride, position, and power. It seeks to dominate, control, and exalt itself. It is a heavy, burdensome thing. But the authority I give is born from the ashes of your own strength. It is rooted in humility and submission. It seeks to serve, to liberate, and to lift others up. It is a light and powerful force. You began to notice a change. Your prayers started to carry a new weight. You were no longer just making hopeful requests. You were beginning to make faith-filled declarations based on the promises in my word. You learned to speak to the mountains of anxiety and sickness in your life and in the lives of others, and you started to see them move. You began to recognize the works of the enemy with your newly opened spiritual eyes, and you learned to bind his influence with a quiet confidence that was not your own. At first, it may have felt strange, even audacious. The voice of inadequacy whispered, "Who are you to do this?" And that was the key. You knew it was not you. The authority you were walking in was not your own. It was the authority of my Son, the King of Kings, flowing through you as a surrendered vessel. It was his name you spoke, his power you relied on, his will you sought. I could only entrust you with this power because you had been humbled, because you had learned obedience, because you knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that you had no power in and of yourself. A person full of pride and self-will cannot be trusted with my authority, for they will inevitably use it for their own glory. But you, my child, had been emptied. You had come to the end of yourself. And so you became a safe and pure channel for my power. This is the great paradox of power in my kingdom, a truth the world can never grasp. True spiritual authority is only given to those who have completely and utterly surrendered their own. You can only exercise it from a place of total submission to me. I am lifting the veil for you, showing you things hidden since the foundation of the world, reserved for those who have endured. This is sacred ground. To treat this moment lightly and turn away now would be to grieve the Spirit who has led you this far. You not be content with a partial view when I am about to show you the full tapestry. Your heart needs to see this. Zay, your world is a cacophony of shouting voices. There is the loud, frantic voice of fear, broadcast 24 hours a day through the news and media, telling you all the reasons you should be anxious. There is the slick, seductive voice of culture, constantly whispering what you should want, how you should look, and what you should believe in order to be accepted. There is the insidious, condemning voice of the enemy, an expert accuser who knows your weaknesses and uses them to hiss lies of shame and inadequacy into your spirit. And then there is the clamor of your own internal voices, the voice of your ambition, the voice of your insecurity, the voice of your wounded past. In the midst of this overwhelming noise, the greatest challenge of your journey was to learn to distinguish my voice from all the others. My voice, you learned, is not often the loudest. I do not usually speak in the fire or the earthquake or the mighty wind. I speak in the still, small whisper after the chaos has passed. But my voice has certain undeniable signatures that you have learned to recognize. First, my voice always, without exception, resonates with the truth of my written word. It will never contradict what I have already said. Second, my voice, even when it brings correction or a challenging instruction, is always accompanied by a deep, resonant, and unshakable peace in your spirit. The voice of fear brings anxiety. The voice of the enemy brings confusion and condemnation. But my voice brings clarity and peace. You had to learn to cultivate a quiet heart to hear me. You learned the discipline of turning down the volume of the world. You spent time in silence, not with an empty mind, but with a listening heart, creating a sacred space for me to speak. The difficult seasons I led you through, the solitude of the wilderness, the enforced stillness of waiting, were not punishments. They were my training ground. I was intentionally quieting all the other noises so that you could become exquisitely attuned to my frequency. It is a skill, a spiritual muscle that you have developed over time. Many of my children get lost on the path. They are distracted by the noise. They follow the voice of fear down a dead-end road, or they are deceived by the enemy's clever imitation of my voice. But you did not get lost. You made it through the confusing and treacherous parts of the journey for one ultimate reason. You followed the voice of the true shepherd. You learned to recognize my call, and that has made all the difference. Your suffering was real. Let us not diminish that. The pain that visited you in the dead of night, the grief that felt like a physical weight on your chest, the anxiety that stole your breath, these were not small things. They were mountains that seemed impossible to climb, oceans that seemed impossible to cross. In those moments, the pain was your entire reality. It consumed your thoughts, colored your vision, and whispered the most convincing of lies, that this pain was all there would ever be. It felt permanent. It felt definitive. The idea of a future free from that ache seemed like a cruel fantasy. Your prayers were often just a single, desperate word. When will this end? You were so close to the canvas of your life. All you could see was a single, dark, and tangled thread, and it looked like chaos and ruin. It was then that I did something crucial for you. I gave you the grace to take a step back. I lifted your gaze. I pulled you up from your immediate, overwhelming pain and gave you a glimpse of what I was doing from my eternal perspective. I showed you the tapestry I was weaving. From your vantage point, you saw only the messy back, the knots, the loose ends, the confusing tangle of dark threads. But from my side, I saw the breathtaking picture that was emerging. I began to teach you that your suffering, which felt so immense and all-consuming to you, was in my eternal economy, light and momentary. And now, This was not to belittle your pain. It was to give it a glorious and magnificent context. I was comparing the weight of your temporary trial to the infinite, eternal weight of the glory it was producing within you. You started to understand. This was a profound shift in your spirit. You began to see your life not as a short dash to be lived for comfort and ease, but as a training ground for eternity. You stopped living for these fleeting 70 or 80 years on earth and started living for the unending ages to come with me. This eternal perspective did not magically remove the pain, but it completely transformed its meaning. The pain was no longer a pointless cruelty. It became a productive, purposeful force. It was a resistance that was making your spiritual muscles stronger. It was the fire that was forging a greater capacity for joy within you. It was the hardship that was purchasing for you a reward in heaven so vast, so glorious, that your current suffering could not even be compared to it. You learned that every tear you shed was an investment in eternal joy. You learned that every moment of endurance was adding to the weight of your glory. This is the secret that allows my chosen ones to endure hardship not with grim resignation, but with a deep, defiant, and supernatural joy. You learned to see your life through the lens of forever. My child, I have just lifted your gaze to see your life through the lens of eternity. If I have granted you this perspective, it is because I am now calling you to help another soul, trapped in their present pain, to look up. There are multitudes drowning in their momentary afflictions, and your act of giving becomes a lifeline of eternal hope to them. I am telling you now, lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven by sending this living water to those who thirst. The need is urgent, and your obedience in this moment is their divine appointment with hope. For every seed you sow into the eternal soil of another's breakthrough, I will rebuke the devourer for your sake and open the windows of heaven over you. Answer this eternal call now through Super Thanks, membership, or the PayPal link, and convert your treasure to an eternal weight of glory. For a long time, you lived a spiritually disconnected life. You believed that your life with me happened in specific, marked-off moments. It happened on Sunday morning in a church building. It happened when you were on your knees in a time of intense prayer. It happened on the mountaintops of profound spiritual experiences, those moments of emotional highs where you felt my presence in a spectacular way. And while those moments were real and beautiful, they were only a fraction of the life I was calling you to. The result was a constant feeling of spiritual whiplash. You would feel close to me after a powerful service, only to feel distant and disconnected by the time Monday afternoon rolled around. You were living for the next event, the next spiritual high, and the vast majority of your life, the ordinary, routine, mundane moments, felt like a spiritual wasteland, a time when you were away from me. I had to teach you a deeper, more integrated truth. I had to teach you to find me, not just on the mountaintops, but in the valleys and plains of your everyday existence. I began to show you that the greatest communion is often found not in the spectacle, but in the simple. I taught you that holiness is not an event you attend, but a moment-by-moment posture of your heart. I began to show you how to transform the most mundane tasks into sacred acts of worship. When you were washing the dishes, you learned to do it with a heart of gratitude for the food you had eaten, and that simple act became a prayer. When you were driving to work, stuck in traffic, you learned to use that time not for frustration, but for intercession, and your car became a sanctuary. When you answered a work email with integrity and kindness, you learned that your keyboard could be an altar. This was the sanctification of the mundane. You discovered that I was not just interested in your spiritual life, I was interested in your whole life. I wanted to be with you in the kitchen, in the office, in the grocery store. You stopped trying to escape your ordinary life to find me and started inviting me into it. This changed everything. It healed the sacred-secular divide that had fragmented your faith. Your life stopped being a series of disconnected spiritual moments and started becoming a single, continuous, unbroken thread of communion with me. While others were chasing the next big conference or the next emotional experience, you were finding a profound and sustainable intimacy with me in the routine. You learned that your entire life, every moment, every task, every word, when done as an offering to me, becomes a sweet-smelling aroma, a constant act of worship. This is the secret of abiding. You finally learned how to walk with me, not just visit me on special occasions. You carried your past like a secret weight, a source of deep shame. The story of your brokenness, your failures, your sins, you kept it hidden, locked away in the darkest corners of your heart. You believed the enemy's lie that your messy past disqualified you from being truly used by me. You thought that to be a credible witness for me, you had to present an image of perfection, of having it all together. The fear of being vulnerable, of letting people see the real, unpolished story of your life, was immense. You feared their judgment. You feared they would see you as a hypocrite. And so, you kept silent. But then, I began to show you a truth that turned your perspective completely upside down. I revealed to you that your story, especially the messy, broken parts, was not a liability. It was, in fact, one of the most powerful spiritual weapons I had placed in your hands. I began to gently nudge you to share it, to tell someone about your past struggle with anxiety, to confess your past failure to a trusted friend, to speak of the darkness I had brought you out of. It was terrifying at first, but when you took that first, trembling step of vulnerability, you saw a miracle happen. Your shame lost its power over you. The secret you had guarded so fiercely, once brought into the light of community, was stripped of its ability to condemn you. You discovered a profound spiritual principle. You overcame the accuser by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of your testimony. The enemy thrives in the darkness of your hidden secrets. But when you openly declare, yes, I was broken, I was lost, I was a mess, but God, his accusations fall to the ground, powerless. And an even greater miracle occurred. As you shared your story of my redemption, you saw it setting other captives free. Your scars, which you once tried to hide, became beautiful signs of victory that gave hope to others who were still in their own battles. When you spoke of how I healed your broken heart, you gave someone else the courage to believe for their own healing. When you confessed the sin I had forgiven, you gave someone else permission to step out of their own shame and into my grace. Your vulnerability, which the world sees as weakness, became the very conduit through which my power and compassion flowed to others. You stopped being ashamed of your past and started seeing it as the backdrop that made my grace shine all the more brightly. Your life, my child, has become a living letter, written by my Spirit, for a hurting world to read. You often felt alone on this narrow path. As I called you to a deeper walk, you found that your old friendships and communities no longer fit. You felt like an outsider, a pilgrim in a foreign land. You sat in conversations that felt superficial and meaningless, longing for a connection that went deeper than shared interests or life stages. The enemy loves to use this isolation as a weapon. He wants you to believe you are the only one, that no one understands, that you are destined to walk this journey entirely by yourself. This loneliness was a heavy burden, and it made the path seem even harder. It was in that season of isolation that I began to orchestrate divine connections for you. I started to weave your path together with the paths of other pilgrims who were on the same journey. You did not find them in the usual places. It was a sovereign work of my Spirit. You would meet someone, and within minutes of talking, you would feel a deep, spiritual recognition, an instant sense of home. It transcended all superficial differences, age, background, race, personality. It was a bond forged in the spirit, a connection between two hearts that had been shaped in the same fires, that spoke the same language of surrender and faith. These were your people. This was your tribe. This was the moment you truly discovered the meaning of my body, the church. Not a building or an institution, but a living, breathing family of my chosen ones scattered across the earth. You learned the absolute necessity of this community. You could not complete the journey alone, nor was that ever my intention. You learned to bear one another's burdens, to weep with those who weep and rejoice with those who rejoice. You found safe people with whom you could be completely vulnerable, confessing your sins and struggles without fear of condemnation. You experienced the power of having someone fight for you in prayer when you were too weak to fight for yourself. You learned how iron sharpens iron, how the truth spoken in love by a trusted brother or sister could bring correction and perspective that you desperately needed. The enemy's strategy is always to isolate, to pick off my sheep one by one. But my strategy is to build my church, a holy community, a spiritual family, and the gates of hell cannot prevail against it. Finding this fellowship, this band of brothers and sisters, was a profound and life-giving confirmation from me. It was my tangible way of saying, you are not alone. You have never been alone. My child, we have reached the threshold. Everything we have spoken of has led to this final revelation. We are standing at the door of your eternal home. To grow weary and turn aside now, when your well done is waiting on my lips, would bring a sorrow to heaven itself. Do not dishonor your own journey by failing to receive your crown. Let us cross this finish line together. After all the trials, after the wilderness and the storms, after the lessons in obedience, forgiveness, and trust, I brought you to a final, ultimate test. This test was not an outward circumstance. It did not involve other people or great challenges. It took place in the silent, most sacred sanctuary of your own heart. By this point, you had seen my faithfulness. Your life was filled with my blessings. The prayers you had once cried out for had been answered. Your family was being restored. Your provision was secure. Your ministry was fruitful. Your life was a testament to my goodness. And in the midst of this blessed life, I came to you with one quiet, searching question. The test was this: after everything I had done for you, after all the gifts I had poured into your life, was I myself still your greatest treasure? Or had my blessings subtly taken my place on the throne of your heart? Did you love me, or did you now love the healed relationship, the successful ministry, the comfortable life I had given you? It was the test I gave to Abraham on the mountain with his son Isaac, the long-awaited promise. I was asking you to place everything I had given you back on the altar, to hold it all with an open hand, and to prove to me, and to yourself, that I was still your exceeding great reward. This is the most subtle and profound purification of the heart. It is the final letting go of self. It is the moment a child moves from loving the Father for the presence He gives, to loving the Father simply for who He is. You had to choose me over my blessings. You had to surrender even the fruits of your long and difficult journey back to me, declaring with your heart's deepest resolve, even if you take all of this away, you are all I want. You are enough. And my child, when your heart made that final, total surrender, when you passed that ultimate test of affection, you had truly made it. That quiet, unseen yes in the depths of your spirit, the choice to love the giver more than the gifts, was the triumphant, final note of this stage of your journey. It was a sound that silenced every accuser and echoed with breathtaking beauty in the halls of heaven. It was the moment your heart became completely and utterly mine. You have now arrived. You have walked through the fires and the floods, and you have come to a place of profound and settled rest. For years, you lived under the crushing, relentless pressure to prove yourself. It was an exhausting performance. You felt you had to prove your worth to your family, to your friends, to your colleagues. You strived to prove you were intelligent enough, successful enough, and worthy of their respect. Even in your walk with me, a subtle spirit of performance lingered. You felt you had to prove your spirituality, your devotion, your faithfulness, terrified that you might disappoint me. You compared yourself to others, constantly measuring your progress, your gifts, your anointing against theirs, and you always found yourself either puffed up with pride or cast down in inadequacy. This life of proving was a heavy suit of armor you wore day and night, and you had grown so accustomed to its weight that you didn't even realize you were carrying it. But now, it is gone. In my presence, through the long and refining journey, I have brought you to a place where you have absolutely nothing left to prove. Think of it, my child. Feel the release in that truth. You have nothing to prove to others. Their opinions, whether they applaud you or criticize you, no longer have the power to define you. You have nothing to prove to yourself. The internal battle to measure up, to silence the inner critic, has ceased. You are no longer striving to become someone worthy of love, and you have nothing to prove to me. I have seen every corner of your heart, every failure, every victory, and my verdict over you was settled at the cross. You are beloved, accepted, and cherished completely. Your worth is not a question to be answered. It is a settled fact, established in my eternal love. Your identity is secure, not in what you do, but in whose you are. Your future is held firmly in my hands. This is the freedom my Son promised, the glorious liberty of the children of God. It is a liberation from the tyranny of performance and the endless, exhausting treadmill of seeking human validation. It manifests in your life as a quiet confidence, a gentle strength that the world cannot understand. It sees your peace in the face of criticism and calls it weakness. It sees your contentment without striving and calls it a lack of ambition. But you know the secret. You are no longer striving. You are simply being. You are being, my child. From this place of deep rest, you can now serve freely, not for recognition, but from a heart overflowing with gratitude. You can love fully, without fear of rejection, because you are already completely accepted. You can live boldly, not to make a name for yourself, but to make my name known. This is the peace that surpasses all understanding. Welcome home to it. For so long, you have lived with the lingering questions, the quiet whys that echoed in your heart during the most difficult seasons. You looked back and saw chapters of your life that felt like chaos, like senseless suffering, like wasted time. You saw the dark threads of pain, the tangled threads of confusion, the gray threads of waiting, and you struggled to see how they could possibly be part of a beautiful design. You trusted me, yes, but a part of you still mourned the years lost in the wilderness or the scars left by the storm. You tried to connect the dots, but the picture remained incomplete and confusing. My beloved child, the time has now come. I am pulling back the great curtain. I am inviting you to step around to my side of the loom, to see the magnificent tapestry of your life from my perspective. Look now, with the spiritual eyes I have given you. See how that dark, painful thread of betrayal you so despised was the very thing I used to weave the brilliant gold thread of compassion and mercy into your character. Do you see how the long, gray, and mundane thread of waiting was absolutely essential to create the deep, scarlet thread of your endurance and unwavering strength? Look closer. That tangled knot of confusion and failure, the one you were so ashamed of, See how I have used it as the backdrop for the incandescent, silver thread of my grace to shine most brightly. Every single thread had a purpose. Nothing was random. Nothing was wasted. What felt like chaos and a series of disconnected events from your limited vantage point was, from my eternal view, a perfect and intricate design. The artist knows what he is doing. I was weaving a masterpiece. The disappointments that broke your heart were necessary to create a new depth and humility in you. The painful goodbyes were required to make room for the divine connections I had planned. The seasons where you felt you were producing nothing were the very seasons I was working most deeply within you. This revelation, this glimpse from my perspective, is a gift. It is designed to wash over your soul with a deep and lasting gratitude, a gratitude that finally silences all the remaining questions. You see it now, don't you? You see how all things, not just the pleasant things, not just the victories, but all things, have been meticulously and lovingly worked together for your good and for my glory. You see now that not a single tear was wasted. Each one was a precious drop of water that nourished the person you have become. You have made it, my child. But you must understand the fullness of what that means. You have not just made it through the trials of this short, fleeting life on earth. You have made it into your eternal inheritance. For so long, your focus hath been, by necessity, on the journey itself, on surviving the day, on overcoming the next obstacle. But I am now lifting your gaze beyond the horizon of this world. Your entire life, every lesson, every shaping, every trial has been a preparation. It has been a training ground. I was not just saving your soul for a future in heaven. I was shaping a ruler for a specific and glorious role in my coming kingdom. Think of it like this: an heir to a great throne does not simply sit and wait to inherit. They are rigorously trained. They learn languages, diplomacy, warfare, and wisdom. They are tested and tried to develop the character necessary to rule with justice and compassion. So it has been with you. The faithfulness you showed in the small, unseen things on earth has qualified you to rule over much in eternity. The wisdom you gained by navigating complex and painful relationships has prepared you to adjudicate with my wisdom. The compassion that was forged in you through your own suffering has created in you a capacity to comfort and lead others with a heart like my son's. The authority you learned to walk in with humility on earth is but a shadow of the authority you will wield at my side. Your suffering was not just a refiner, it was an enlarger. It produced in you a capacity for glory that your mind, in its current state, can only just begin to comprehend. In my kingdom, you are not merely a guest in my house. You are not a rescued servant. You are a co-heir with Christ. You are royalty. Everything I have belongs to my son, and you, as his beloved sibling, share in that inheritance. This is the secret and staggering destiny for which you were created. It is the true high calling that has pulled on your spirit your entire life, that longing for a home and a purpose you could not quite name. This earthly life was your qualification. It was your ambassadorial training for an eternal posting of unimaginable significance and joy. The unique tapestry I have woven of your life is the very pattern that fits you perfectly for the place I have prepared for you. Now, my precious child, come closer. Quiet your heart. Still your spirit. For these are the words your soul has been longing to hear from the moment I first breathed life into you. This is the whisper that is the answer to every question, the healing for every wound, the fulfillment of every desire. Listen, as I, your Father, your Creator, your Redeemer, and your King, speak them over you now. Well done, my good and faithful child. Feel the weight of those words. Let them sink deeper than all the voices of accusation, all the whispers of failure, all the shouts of condemnation you have ever heard. This is my final and unchanging verdict over your life. Well done. You took the narrow path when the broad path looked so much easier and more appealing. You chose the hard road of obedience and surrender. You fought the good fight. You stood firm when everything around you was shaking. You did not give up. You did not turn back. When darkness pressed in, you held onto my hand even tighter. You kept the faith. It was tested. It was tried. It was battered and bruised, but it was not broken. You cherished my truth as your most precious possession. You loved me more than you loved the world. You chose my presence over fleeting pleasures, my will over your own comfort. You have finished the race I set before you. You have crossed the line, not in your own strength, but by my grace, which was your constant supply. The journey is complete. The battle is won. Enter now into my joy. Not a temporary happiness, not a fleeting feeling, but my joy. The profound, eternal, creative joy of your God, a joy I have been lovingly preparing for you from before the foundation of the world. It is a joy that you now have the capacity to fully receive because of the journey you have walked. You have made it. You are home. And only the few, only those who have walked this same path of fire and faith, can ever truly understand what these words truly mean. You have heard my commendation, my beloved, because you have made it home. Now, from this place of victory and rest, your first act of worship is to send this map back to those still lost in the wilderness. You are now my lighthouse on the shore, and your giving is the very oil that keeps this light burning for every ship still battling the storm. Let your light so shine before others through this act, that they may find their way and glorify me. Do not rest in your own arrival while a brother or sister is still fighting for their life on the path. This is your urgent appointment to reach back for them. As you pour out this oil, I declare your own lamp will never run dry, and my favor will be a shield around you. From your place of victory, sow into theirs. Give now through super thanks, membership, or the link below, and become a lifeline for the chosen who are still on their way. My child, this word was a seal upon your spirit, a testament to the path only a few can understand. If you have walked this fire with me and recognize your own story in these words, your journey now requires a declaration. Do not let this moment pass into silence. Let your voice join the fellowship of those who have been set apart. Go now and write it below for the heavens and the earth to witness, not with pride, but with the humble power of a survivor. I understand this path. By grace, I made it. Amen. If you believe in me, your Heavenly Father, then like this video and leave a heartfelt amen in the comments. If you want to stay closer to me, then subscribe to this channel.